knew you wanted to be front and center.
Oh, yeah.
I'm good. How are you doing?
This one?
Just got off of work.
Hey, how you doing? Long time no see. It's been a while. I know. You've grown a whole beard since I saw you last. Yeah.
Good, how are you? Down here?
That's what I said.
This one right here? This one? Yeah, it works. But I can't vote.
Did you find out that he's given off?
I just did, yeah. Okay, where am I sitting?
How do I vote?
Chuck was there.
I don't get to vote.
Oh, no. It's funny, you know.
I guess I can get this off. Yeah.
We can talk here, but yesterday I didn't, because since I had talked.
How you doing?
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
I just want to keep my, I didn't want to violate anything yesterday. I didn't want to chat about the.
Oh yeah, no worries.
But I can say that here, I share sentiments of what you shared.
If, no.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What is this?
I think you're right for fingers.
We're working on that better, sir. Thank you very much. Is this somebody's stool?
They thought you might need that. You know.
I think I like that.
I have no idea what this is.
I think that's probably maybe good. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wow. Is there interest in this today?
A little.
Just a little.
Just a little.
I stirred up. I was at the league meeting this morning in Sacramento, and they let questions come from the floor. It was on harassment training and whatnot. And I said, "Do you have any templates for discipline procedures for city council members?" You know, the whole place. They went into an uproar. Okay. It was funnier shit. Mayor Patterson says that's a good idea because everybody's got a story. Oh, we talk more about that than anything.
The problem is, you know, there's only so much you can do. You can't remove them because the voters put them in.
Yeah, that stuff. It was just funny. I asked the question.
Here's Dave. Give me a Bodor, man. I'm stirring it up.
It was funny. I think I don't know. Oh, looks like we're good.
is on now?
We're on 3, and 2 is almost done. The ramps are all the ramp concrete's poured. Yeah, all the concrete's there. So they're putting all the because we have to do this concrete for using the parking lot. Oh, so that's all. They're doing all the rebar right now. So yeah, so it's good. We're all good. Yeah. Oh yeah. Compliments is above water. Yeah. Well, it's mostly pictures, right? So.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'd like to call this meeting into order. Today is January 16th, 2019 for the Supplemental Benefit Fund Steering Committee special meeting. And we'd like to stand for the pledge. Salute. Pledge. Salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we get a roll call, please?
Member Imberlin?
Here.
Member Reynolds?
Here.
Member Pittman?
Here.
Member Carter?
Here.
Member Thompson?
Here.
Advisory members, Member C?
Here.
Member Haynes? Member Steindorf?
Here.
And Member Zeitler.
Here.
All right, well, at this time we want to recognize anybody who would like to speak. Today we will be using the blue slips, and so we do ask that you fill out the blue slips that are located here on the side of the room. We do ask that you fill those out and turn them in before committee reports are given. We don't want to do a back and forth thing, and please note that comments are today limited to, especially the amount of speakers that we have, limited to 1 minute each. I also want to say I really appreciate everybody who's here today. Today is a culmination of a lot of time and hard work, both from staff, from Department of Water Resources, from this board, and members of the community who've presented several very important projects and viable projects. I do want to say as well that I think there's no better way to get a family to argue than to throw money out there and have them argue over who gets it. I understand that we have a lot of presented projects, and as you've seen, I think the numbers 13. $5,550,000 has been requested, and as many of you know, that's more than double what we have to hand out. So this is a very important process, and is not something that I know for myself or anybody on the board here is looking to just rush through. We want to consider each one of these projects, and I hope that the community is together that whether or not your projects get selected to be funded, that the main thing is that we look forward to the city of Oroville to be improved for everybody. This time we would like to recognize individuals who wish to speak on non-agenda items, or are we doing agenda items here, Jackie? Non-agenda.
It looks like the hearing for non-agenda items is at the end of this agenda.
Okay. Do we have a special speaker? I'm maybe a little confused on what's.
Yes, I read the agenda, and it said that you'd
sorry,
be recognized.
Please state your name.
My name is Clarence Brandt. I go by Sonny. Please call me Sonny, not Clarence. Scott, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've never met you before. It's been about 10 years since I've been in the process, so I'm old and rusty and may not know my way around. But I'd like to speak on 1A, item 3, which is part of the consent agenda. So your comment that you'd hear people after that, I'm concerned about what's on the consent agenda. And I think my voice should be heard, but...
So, sir, what happens then is a member of the public or anybody on the board can pull an item from consent. So that item, based on what you just said, would be pulled from consent and discussed separately. And can you make sure you turn in a...
That's...
Yeah, fill out a blue slip, and I'll pull it so you can speak on it. How's that?
So make sure you get the blue slips filled out. Anybody who wants to speak, please. There.
Thanks, Sonny.
You're welcome.
So we'd like to pull number 3. Anybody else would like to pull any of the numbers on the consent calendar? Any comments from the board on the consent calendar? Looking for a motion?
Staff would like to
Okay.
remove 4A.
No, actually,
Mr. Brandt had, sorry.
not you.
Somebody in the audience would like to...
Mr. Brandt had asked to have, I believe, which item were you asking to have removed, Sonny?
The chamber.
Yeah,
Oh, the
number
chamber.
3, that's what we
okay,
just
all right,
mentioned.
sorry.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, I move that we approve the consent agenda for the exception of item C.
3?
Item 3.
Item
I second.
Voting's open.
Motion carries.
All right, bringing up item number 3. Do we have a staff report?
That'll be you.
That would be me. Am I on it? Okay. So this staff report has to do with the Chamber of Commerce requesting an extension on their grant funding. And it was awarded to them, let's see, $50,000 assisting in tourism and marketing in the Oroville region for a 12-month period. That ended as of January 31st, 2019. And they are wanting an extension because they did not use all of their funds that were allotted to them of the $50,000. So they are trying to extend their contract until April 30th, 2019. There also is a change in their contract. They're wanting to allot $1,000 to help with the BID project and for downtown. There's also a written letter in there from Eric Smith, who is the new president and CEO. There's a written letter requesting the extension.
Any on the board would like to speak to this item? I believe we have.
I'm sorry, what was the amount again for the extension?
The initial amount was $50,000.
Right. Yeah.
They are wanting to change their contract to $1,000. That's $1,000 of the leftover remainder goes to the BID. Okay. The remainder was let me double check what their remainder is exactly. They have $14,706 left over. that's what they're wanting to extend until April, but 1,000 of it to the BID.
Okay, and then I see part of NOFA, they will be asking for additional $50,000 this time around too.
No, this is just the original 50,000. They have 14,000 left.
Okay, I was just looking at the update, so I misread that myself. I apologize. So, okay,
No problem.
thank you.
Mr. Pittman, you're in the queue.
Just for clarification, the dollars that we're talking about for this extension of the chamber essentially comes out of the administrative fund and not the NOFA that we have.
Yeah, it's already been allocated. It has nothing to do with the amounts in the NOFA.
I just want to clarify. Thank you. Appreciate that.
This time we'd like to open up this item for public comment. Mr. Sonny, could you? Are there any other speakers on this item, Jackie?
I'm going to read this. The State Water Project gave us Lake Oroville, but it is really not a lake. It's a reservoir. As water increases in value, it's going to be drawn down faster and faster. What our reservoir took away was the free-flowing river that we had going through the middle of our town. And that was a major center of recreation resource for this town and community. They took it away, but they replaced it with what they called the lake. And we negotiated with them and reached a supplemental agreement that required them to provide $50 million.
Time.
I know you haven't been here for a while, so there's that 1 minute time limit. But just for your sake, if you want to,
That's 1 minute.
Yeah, there's a big clock behind us here. But just for your sake, because I'm not sure if you're clear on this is an item relating to what you're speaking to is an item relating to an extension for time that we've allotted $50,000 to the Chamber of Commerce, which is we've already allotted to them. So number 3, which you asked to be pulled, is just for a time extension for them to use those funds that have been given to them.
Okay, I thought I had this within 1 minute, but I guess I talked slower. Let me
If you
just
put it
say,
in a little nutshell, yeah, 'cause you have a lot to get through.
I'll put it in a nutshell. It's a supplemental development, quote, development. I don't see the development. I'm looking for capital projects. I'm looking for something we have, something we build, something that brings people here.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. We'll close public comment at this time. Any other comments from the board? Looking for a motion?
I would motion we move the item as agenda-sized.
A second that.
Voting is open.
Motion carries.
All right. We have updates now from the receive and approve the NOFA related items, and we have an update from the quarterly report. Number 5.
On the chamber?
Yes.
Chamber's informational only. I'm sorry, requesting for number 5 on updates?
Updates. Is there an update you're supposed to give to us, or on number 5?
Just informational only. It's included in there. It's just the breakdown of what the chamber has been doing.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to regular business. I just want to.
Didn't we do B, Scott?
We went through 4 was on the consent calendar.
He did
We approved this on the consent calendar.
separate
Okay,
consents,
we got all
though.
that down below too.
Now we're on number 6.
I'm okay with it.
Oh.
It was on the consent calendar.
Yeah, okay, got you.
So now we're on regular business for those that are following along. One thing I want to explain here, just to kind of explain our thoughts. And of course, I'm open to motions on the board here, but we have a lot of items to get through, and I know there's many supporters for these items that are here. I know that you were asked today to bring, to be ready to present a presentation. And so as we go through, there's some questions that some of the board and the committee will be asking you. At that time, we ask that you come forward to the dais, state your name, and at that point, either you're asked to present a presentation to the board or answer any questions. We do ask that you do so in a timely manner because there are, again, so many projects that are here. One motion that I actually do want to make today is that we separate these items in two different categories. Of course, this has to be approved by motion and the board, but I don't want to push through these projects hastily. Again, trying to divvy up $2 million, a little over $2 million to $5.5 million of requests is difficult because you have some committee members who, especially after today, will be receiving new information on these projects, and it may not be fully prepared to adequately and objectively divvy up all the funds properly. So my recommendation to the board today would be that we hear from individuals that are requested. If you have, if you want to hear from a presentation from one of these projects, that we go through them, and you can ask either for, if somebody want to ask to the presenters to get their item presented, or if you simply have a question for them. At that time, we do ask that you respond to those questions. And I know that there are many here that want to speak on behalf of their project. For the sake of time, again, if you can have one or two people that can come and speak on behalf of your crowd, that'd be probably more beneficial for everybody in the room than to have 20 people speak the same thing for the item. So with that, how we're going to go through it, my recommendation is to go through each item, and staff here or the board can ask for either, they can ask questions or they can ask for a presentation. At that point, we move forward. At the end of this, I do want to, again, because I want to respect you guys' time, we're in the middle of the day here. At that point, I would like to talk to the board here and have them explain if there's top projects specifically that they feel are clear and they would like to see move forward. Kind of categorize them in A and B projects. A being top priority, A being, I think this is clear, I think this clearly fits in the NOFA, I think this clearly fits in the reason for the SBF, so we can just kind of move those aside. At that point, we can see if the board approves those, what monies are left over, and then reconvene this meeting would be my suggestion until next week on Wednesday the 23rd is what the opening is, right, Jackie?
Their regularly scheduled meeting is the 23rd, yes.
Yeah, so move the B projects, the ones that, you know, not their B in quality or B in importance, but maybe in clarity for the board, move those to that week, and that gives the board here time to adequately, after the questions have been answered, any presentations that have been needed, been brought, and then they can kind of digest that for a week, come back next week with a more educated decision on what they would like to do with these items. Does that make sense, everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that also be honor everybody's time and get things done as fast as possible. Not hastily, but effectively.
Chair, I do want to indicate that the speaker cards we've gotten talk about speaking on, 6A, B, C, D, E, and they don't necessarily differentiate which item. So they may want them to come up and speak and then pursue detailed reports. I don't know how you want to handle it. I'm just looking at the cards and see how they specified what they want to talk on.
I have 5 speaker cards currently for item 6.
Okay. At this time, we'll move on to item number 6. Before we open up to speakers, does anybody on the board would like to speak to this item or would like to ask for a presentation or ask questions to the presenters?
And that is, are we going to the very first one now, right here? Okay, to Feather River Rectory part? Yes. I would like to have a presentation. Oops, do I have to, a presentation from the district exactly what this, because I think we really need to have it laid out what we're looking at for the improvements for Nelson Pool.
Can you give us a presentation, sir?
As it so happens, I have one.
Randy, would you like the clicker for your?
Sure, thanks. I've not had any clicker training, so please bear with me. I also have a couple of letters of support from some users of the pool, the Orcas, as well as Nelson School. I'd like to share that with the committee. Pass it on. You guys. Public if anybody wants it. So what I've done, I'm not going to really kind of go too much into detail about what I've written. I assume you've all read that. My presentation is largely some photos, and I captioned this, making what was old new again. I know the SBF, it's been said that the SBF does not provide money for maintenance. I've also heard it said that the SBF can do pretty much what it thinks needs to be done. So what I've tried to do in this project is capture some things that are clearly maintenance. I mean, this pool is, my understanding, at least 50 years old, and it hasn't had a whole lot of maintenance done to it. A few years back, we took a grant from the state, and we signed some grant assurances that we would keep the pool operational through November of 2027. So almost 9 more years, the district is obligated to keep the pool operational. We'll be lucky to make it that long if we don't do something, and do something soon. I would point out that the state voters last June passed Proposition 68 that commits $4 billion in bond monies to parks and recreation activities with a special, I don't know what the percentage is, but a fairly significant percentage of those funds guaranteed to disadvantaged communities, which obviously Oroville is considered. So with that in mind, I just wanted to share some pictures about, and where do I point it? That way? Where's the receiver? Over here? Like I said, I haven't had training, so I'm sorry.
Is it on?
So this is just a kind of a Google Earth snapshot of what we're talking about. We're talking about the Nelson Pool over at the Nelson Complex, adjacent to the forebay. Obviously, it's well within the parameters of the reach of the SBF. This is a picture of the kiddie pool as it exists. This was right when the fire first started, so this is back in November. I took the photos. This is a picture of the pool. A little bit dirty, but again, this was in a period of time when it's not been used, so it's been closed for a few days, and obviously with the fire, a little bit hazy. Diving board, view down back toward the club or the offices. This is a shot of the concrete, a little bit distorted because of the way I expanded the film, but again, you can see it's not particularly level, definitely not ADA compliant, etc. So this was just to demonstrate that. Another view of the other side of the pool. This is what consists of the shade structure and bleachers and picnic area for the current situation. This is the security fence, and as I mentioned in my write-up, it has been defeated many times. Things have been pushed in the pool, thrown in the pool, kids jump in over it overnight. From not just from the vandalism perspective, from purely a safety perspective, that's concerning. If individuals can get in at night or when the pool is closed, obviously there's a potential safety factor, a risk factor to the district. This is a conceptual drawing of what Melton has done for me with a very limited budget, I might add, to give you some idea about what we could do. The wade pool has been removed and a splash feature has been added. There's been some seating, shaded areas, increased picnic area. The pool itself is not changed much other than the fact that it needs to be replastered and have some plumbing repaired. There's a slide potentially there was lost in a previous vandalism. There's been recommendation of some kind of floating obstacle course, which is apparently fairly popular in public pools now. And again, just an artist's representation of what could be done if this project were fully funded. The ask from the district, or from the SBF for the district, is $750,000. The overall project is $1.1 million, so the district is matching between monies that it currently has, but some of it specifically raised for the pool restoration, as well as some fundraising that we would intend to do some of the special features, $350,000. So it's not quite 50% of the amount we're asking from the SBF, and it breaks down cost-wise as this. And I put the little asterisk there if you had an opportunity, or maybe it wasn't too small to read on the footnote on the sheet where I costed this all out. This is spreading out the costs, things like mobilization and project administration, throughout the various features. So if, for instance, this committee were to grant some of the funds, maybe, but not the entire amount, and say we're going to not put the bleachers in, for instance, that's $20,625. That does not necessarily equate to a $20,625 reduction in the total cost, because there's some mobilization costs. Anybody's familiar with construction, it costs you X dollars to move equipment and get a contractor on site. But this was the best way. The 15% overhead is largely per item, but again, it's not exactly dollar for dollar. So I just wanted to explain that it's not precisely. We can't just say we're going to cut out 100,000 and therefore we're going to cut these items out. What we would do is we obviously take whatever you give us and then figure out how best to spend it. So that's really what I wanted to share with you. If there's any specific questions about what was written, I do know we did calculate that the current the estimation of water that we've lost due to some plumbing problems and leaks, if you go back, if you look at the picture, oops, we won't go back now, there we go. The one picture of the pool there, you can see the coping is split. That's where I identified some of the leaking, as well as potentially some of the underground plumbing. So we did a calculation of the approximate cost of the loss of water and the additional chemical cost because of the lost water, and that currently averages $25,000 to $30,000 per year that we would no longer have to spend. I mean, we obviously still treat the water, et cetera, and refill the pool, but that's simply a number that we estimate that our annual loss is operating under the current conditions. So I'm here to answer any questions or provide any additional detail.
Jackie, could you put for me the request to speak screen, please? We have two members in the queue, actually three. Mr. Pittman's first.
Yeah, could I have the picture of the conceptual drawing? Thank you. Randy, my question basically is, what's your current usage in terms of a ballpark number of attendance using the pool as it is? And then do you have any projections on, if you did improve it to this level, what the usage may be in terms of participants?
My understanding is that we limit the number of people that can come in, largely due to space, to 100 people per 3-hour block of time, and we have 2 of those blocks of time each day during the summer when the pool is open. I've been told that there are a number of days when we're sold out. I couldn't tell you exactly how many days that is. The letter that I provided from Nelson School that I just handed out, the principal there indicated that it's a fairly bustling place during the day. Obviously, she's there during the summer, mostly late in the summer when the school's getting ready to go back into session. They do use the pool there. So I don't have that exact number. I'm sorry, I can't share that with you. But part of the concept for me with the district is potentially adding another, like an evening swim, which we currently don't offer, which would then obviously make it more inviting, families with parents at work, etc. It would make it a little more more usable space, as well as the fact that it's a larger space because we're going to have the picnic area. Right. We're going to have the splash pad, which there's not a concern about, toddlers drowning or otherwise getting falling into the water and getting hurt. And so we anticipate, an increase. I couldn't tell you, 20% maybe.
Right. The other part of the question is this still the home base for the swim team, the Orcas?
Yeah, the Orcas as well as Oroville High School both use this pool during their season.
So it has a huge amount of use that, and I'm an old Orca parent, so I spent 7 years there myself, and I'm familiar with it, and it's past time to have it fixed. I agree, and I applaud the district for bringing this forward. I had not seen this until I saw this packet, so it's innovative, and I applaud you for that. Thank you.
You bet. Like I said, I was trying to include maintenance as well as some new features.
Right.
Member Reynolds?
How did you arrive at your budget? Do you have a contractor or someone who's given you a bid, or your architect gave you the budget?
Melton Design was the architect. I told them I had $300,000 that I knew we had for the district, and that I knew that it was a 50% requirement or request rather from the SBF to match. So I said, let's talk about what we can do for that. And the original proposal was closer to $2 million. And architects like to make things pretty and Taj Mahal type things, but I explained that no, we can't do that. And so he consulted with some swimming pool developers. Obviously, in the business that he's in, everybody knows the Melton Design Group. They do quite a few things around town, so they've got their finger on the pulse of most of the construction costs. Obviously, these are all estimates, and these estimates were done before the fire. And my experience in construction suggests, that basic law of supply and demand says that as there's more demand for materials, as there's more of a demand for labor, those costs are going to go up. So these are numbers that were based on November before the fire.
And you say that you received a grant for this pool before. What was that grant supposed to cover?
It required some repairs that were necessary at that time, and those repairs were done. But as many grants are made, particularly from the state, that they do require a specified period of time that the pool would remain operational. And I believe it was a 20-year commitment. And like I said, that time expires in November of 2027.
You say one of the plans is to replaster the pool. Has this been done before?
I'm sure it's been done sometime in the 50-year existence of the pool, but not for a long time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Member Emberland?
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Excellent report. I think we all here are concerned about water usage. And my understanding is the heavy use at this pool is sometimes loss of 14,000 gallons per day.
The estimate that I saw was between 4 and 10, depending on the season.
Yeah, but heavily used, I think we're up in the tens and closer to 12,000 gallons of water, which is, I think, terrible. Mm-hmm. And it's not your fault. Basically, the district, I believe, and the high usage times, basically dedicates a man out there, just trying to keep the pH levels right for all the kids in there and make sure it's healthy. And as committee and Pittman stated that this is a very well-used pool, and as the principal down at middle school, Rochelle, it's heavily used, and something has to be done. I've been by there in the summer, and I think more should be done out there, to be honest. I don't know what you think about saltwater pools require less maintenance. Maybe we can look into that lately, but this is a very important project. I'm definitely on board, and we can do this again in phases. Do you agree, Randy? We could do this.
It can be done in phases, certainly, but like I pointed out a minute ago when I was sharing the cost, it won't necessarily be a dollar for dollar amount.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think we need to improve the area around that, just like the conceptual plan there, so where families can hang out and not be sitting in the concrete out there, and be able to have a place to have a little quiet time, have a barbecue, and be able to still watch your kids swim and have fun. So, and could you explain that if that proposition again? We could be in jeopardy of losing funding if we do not repair this.
Right. The letter that I received from the state office, OGALS is the acronym, OGAL, Office of Grants and Local Services. I don't remember the exact, something of that nature. The response that I received was we had to keep this pool operational through November of 2027, or that we would risk, didn't say we absolutely would lose it, but we would risk loss of any future grants. Which and my point in bringing that up to Proposition 68 was that's $4 billion that the state bonds have guaranteed that will be given out, and a significant percentage of that is guaranteed to go to disadvantaged communities. I know we're looking at several things that we could be using that money for. The funds have not yet been made available, but to the extent that we would qualify, it's, my opinion, foolhardy to risk the potential gain that we have from those other projects, because it's not just this location, it's throughout the district, which is 30 or 40% of the total county land area. So,
yeah, we only have two pools,
right?
Palermo and Nelson, and Nelson, it's something major happening to it, and then we have to shut that down. I think the state would understand, but I don't want to see that happen either. And we need some warm water swim areas for the community of Oroville, and the outlying areas also. And we have one in each corner right now. We need another one, I think. But I'm definitely 100% for. I don't want to classify this as maintenance. So I think we should go through and take out the old and put in new. You know, let's not try to repair something. Let's go in and get it done. Don't replaster anything. Let's put a new location in for a pool. I don't care, but
the goal would be to make the best use of the money. This is ideally, but again, if there's some contingency basically suggested by the SBF that we explore a saltwater pool. We'll look into all that stuff and make the best use of the money. But you know, we will use less. We could use more.
Thank you.
As far as the funds.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm next in the chair. Just have a couple comments. Try to make it as brief as possible. I know we have a lot to get through this afternoon. I do actually agree with the sentiments with everybody. Sounds like on the board so far. I'm one of the main reasons for the SBF is to replace, as I believe it was Mr. Sunny said in the back, the loss of warm water recreation. We have this facility here, and you know, I got two sons. I got two boys, and in my personal opinion, you know, we do need to look forward to the next generation. What are we going to do for the families? Actually, I was up in Paradise here at the ice skating rink during the holiday season, and there was an elderly couple that were up there, and they asked specifically at the ice skating rink, is this where the pool is? There's no pool in Chico, and we're looking for a spot to take our kids to swim. I mentioned there's a pool in Oroville. And when I showed my boys this conceptual plan, they were thrilled. I got a couple questions on that, though, just for clarification. I see diving boards. Is that included in this? 'Cause I didn't really.
There are diving boards that are currently in place.
Are they going to be renovated or
Potentially, if they're necessary, yes.
Okay. Second question I have is for the lawn and picnic area. Is that locked in as far as your bid here goes? Because right now everything looks like it's fenced in. So there's not much room to spread out. Everything's just on the old concrete. Is that correct? I personally have not been there yet.
So if you look, this is kind of the area where the behind the fence.
Right. Everything
is
is
the area. So
right.
we would push the fence out.
Right.
And again, we would make the best use of. I'm not sure if there's another shot here or not.
It's really, okay. And so not to interrupt you, but just kind of move forward. The trees are as well included with the bid. I know it's conceptual.
Right. It's conceptual, and again. I know Greg pretty well. I don't think I'm overstating anything when I say he likes trees. So, we'll provide as much shade as possible. Again, it's budget driven,
right?
And it's an important part of the feature.
Gotcha. Another thing is, do you guys already have a low income family program for those that maybe come to the table and they're specifically low income families? So they have some. Grant or not grant, but some kind of application,
like a scholarship kind of
scholarship type thing.
Not currently, but it is something that I intend to take to the board soon.
That would be for me a contingency. We need to look at, because we lost free warm water recreation, and so to provide warm water recreation for only families that can afford it, we need to be looking for the whole community. So for me, that would definitely be a contingency, that families that can show that they're low income, live here in Oroville, that they can apply for a scholarship or something to where their kids can at least swim at a discounted rate or whatnot.
We currently, the way the fee is currently set up, it's $4 if you pay at the door, basically $30, I think, for a 10 visit punch card. And then if it's for a family of 4, it's $100 and something for the whole summer.
Is that for all their kids or per kid?
It's for a family of 4. So if they're more than 4, technically they're supposed to pay. Maybe buy another pass. I don't know how it works, quite honestly. Those are some of the details that I'm not that familiar with. But I do know that we have kind of a multi-level thing where, again, if you're just going for the day, it costs you $4. If you're going for, you live in the area and you plan on going frequently throughout the summer, you get a little bit of a discount. And then there is a consideration for families of 4. We might be able to do something for larger families, or again, take into consideration your suggestion with a scholarship.
Yeah, for me, the contingency would be specifically an aggressive policy for low-income families. If you got a mom that's got, a bunch of kids, she's, a lot of people are paying, living paycheck to paycheck,
right.
And barely make it. We know the first happens in Oroville, and everybody understands that things go kind of crazy here in Oroville because the stores are flooded, because people will have money and they can actually buy food at that point. So, $100 is quite a bit for a low-income family to do. So that would be a contingency for me if this were to go forward, for an aggressive program for low-income families.
Okay.
And at that point, it would be nice to kind of have that materialize at this point, but extended and maybe discounted 50% off or something for families who can qualify. But that would definitely need to be something that I'd want. Sorry for taking too long. This parking lot we see on the bottom side or on the right-hand side, is that existing or is that going to be added?
The parking lot on the right-hand side?
The right-hand side of the photo, or what is that? Is that a road?
It's a gravel access road because we need chemical deliveries, and the shed for the pool equipment is back there.
Gotcha. And as well, the fence, you said you want to improve the fence. Can you explain that?
Well, the cyclone fence that we currently have is not adequate to keep folks out. And so one of the expenses on the list is to put in a no-climb, probably wrought iron type of fence that would make it difficult, if not impossible. I know my dad used to say a lock only keeps an honest man out. Same thing could be said for a fence or a wall.
Sure.
Similar to playland?
I'm sorry?
The fence similar to playland, is that what you're talking
about?
Yeah, it's kind of that curved.
Right, at the top, so it makes it hard to get over.
Okay. Any other, we have also member Carter's in the queue.
David. we have questions.
The peanut gallery.
David?
Just a couple of questions, Randy, that I'd
Sure.
like to clarify. We had discussed, it really is upsetting to lose we're losing 4,000 gallons a day in the summer, and then 10,000 on the weekends or during the week when the children are swimming. That's a lot of water to be losing. So we do need to address this. But my question is, if we close the kids, the problem is, what my understanding is, between the main pool and the kiddie pool. In between there is where the problem is. If we actually close down the kiddie pool and didn't put in $351,750 into the kiddie pool and adding a splash pad, that would eliminate our water problem right there. Is that correct?
Not entirely. There's still, again, the one photo of the pool decking right there. You see, that's the main pool, and that cracking on the coping suggests that there's water leaking there as well. So the kiddie pool is part of it, certainly. And again, I need to maybe rephrase the statement. That $351,000 is not just for the splash pad. That's demolishing the old thing, which probably just going to be poking some holes in the bottom and filling it in with dirt. But it's also redoing the concrete because there's damage to the concrete. We need to tear up concrete to get at some of the plumbing that's underneath it. It's to make up an ADA accessible path from the entrance of the pool to the edge of the pool, where that little cutout is on the bottom of the kind of bottom left of the pool itself. There'll be an ADA lift that will allow people that are wheelchair bound to be able to get into that and then be dropped, lifted gently into the pool. So there's an ADA path of travel, which is going to require tearing up concrete and leveling it, because there's degrees of grade basically that are limits, and so a lot of that $350,000 is going to need to be spent even if we don't put the splash pad in.
Because my other thing is, we're putting in a splash pad at Riverbend Park, which
Right.
will be opening pretty quickly. It'll be here this summer.
Right.
And, we have a beautiful splash pad there, so I'm thinking, are we needing to do that also out at Nelson? But my concerns also, too, is I understand we really need the heating and the filtration. That's extremely important. To me, there's things that are important, but I don't see spending $1.1 million out at the pool at this time, when it's not really, it's fixing it, like we did Palermo Pool, and we spent why did we spend just a little over $300,000 for Palermo Pool?
I don't know,
It
but
was
something
great.
that sounds right.
It's beautiful out there, but unfortunately, we never even got to do the bathrooms. We never got to fix any of the handicap out there. So I'm still thinking there's a lot of work to be done out at the Palermo Pool. But I think we need the plumbing infrastructure is extremely important, and I agree that the fence is also important. But I think the splash pad, and really at this time, there's so many other uses of this money. Do we need to have the kiddie pool? And the biggest use for this is the kids club. It's the summer camp. Because in the summer camp, out of the 100 kids that might be swimming, because I actually tracked it, about 60 to 70 kids a day are the summer camp kids who are using it, because they use Nelson School, which is great. We have a work where Nelson School gets to use the pool, and they basically only use the pool when it's warmer months. They don't use it during the winter. And so those are my concerns. I think that Nelson Pool is something to be looked at, but I also believe that we have Nelson Park that is right there, and I also believe that money needs to be put into Nelson Park as far as building our baseball fields, lights, lots of things out there to make it an amazing park. But that's just where I absolutely agree that this should be done. I just don't see spending. I think we should be limited on how much that we make, maybe $550,000, just a suggestion, towards the pool.
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds, and then we'll get to the peanut gallery.
Peanut number one here.
Mayor first, and then we'll get to the peanut gallery.
Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry.
Yeah, I went to Nelson School, and when I started going to Nelson Pool, it was 10 cents to get in. But as far as your security, is it just the no-climb fence? Because we used to just go over the wall and open the door and let everybody in. So.
Right. The no-climb fence is the biggest component of it, but we will take other steps to make sure that, I mean, again, the point is to secure the perimeter.
Because I like your idea, and it would be a beautiful addition to the community, but we also need to think about protecting it.
Oh, absolutely.
Unfortunately, some people are just out to destroy.
Right.
But we just used it. We didn't destroy it.
Yeah.
I guess my question was answered about the pool will be heated.
It is heated. Typically, we don't heat it during the summer, obviously, because it's warm enough. We do heat it into the fall when the orcas in the high school are using it. Like I said, by replacing it with a more energy-efficient heater and filtration system, that opens up a lot of other possibilities. I personally, in the past, have been a master's swimmer. We don't currently have a master's program in Oroville. I would love to be able to do something like that and make that a year-round facility, at least, for that kind of. But again, that's to be determined. But that's kind of what my thought process is.
I was a lifeguard at that pool when I was 13, 14. But so, will it be available in the winter months? Because we are really cutting out about 3/4 of the year there.
Right.
If there was a cover or something that we could consider. I know the Racket Club used to have a pool with a cover on. We were up there all year.
I believe we have a director that used to be involved in the Racket Club. But yes, I think, again, the current plan is no. The amount of money that we're asking for now does not include that. But should you find that to be, I have no idea even what it would cost, but the idea would be if we could make it with some kind of, they have a cover, like the little plastic cover that floats on the water, but not a dome like to go over the pool. But yeah, if there's a need or a demand in the community for year-round swimming, we definitely will look into it.
It would be an idea. Yeah, I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Peanut Gallery number 1.
Thanks, Scott. So here's my question. You've done a really good job at laying out, the need out there. There's deferred maintenance required, upgrades, and certainly an interest from the community. My question is, given that it seems evident that the district hasn't been able to do the current O&M on the facility, what revenue streams do you see in the future that are going to allow you to support the existing project or the improvements if the SBF decides to fund this?
I can't speak directly to the past. I do know that the pool has not been a priority of the district in the past. And so as far as the maintenance goes, I've not been with the district quite a year. And I don't want to speak out of turn because I haven't really consulted with my board yet, but I have a lot of plans. We are in the process of renovating Riverbend Park. Riverbend Park will have a new amphitheater. The new amphitheater will be constructed in a way that will provide a decent venue for actual concerts as a wedding venue. I know the city of Chico recently renovated their Rose Garden, and I was told that they are receiving $150,000 a year in revenue for weddings all by itself. There's opportunities there. I have a brand new recreation supervisor. We're talking about new programs, new things that we can do to increase revenue. Obviously, with the campfire and a lot of the folks being forced to relocate, and there's a lot of, I know with the city, there's a lot of new and or old kind of reinvigorated development going on, so there'll be a lot of new revenue. I don't think it'll be a problem.
And then my other question actually is for Eric. In the settlement agreement, there's a requirement for a warm water swimming area. And you don't have to answer this now, but if I heard the recommendation that we come back after hearing some of the proposals, but determining if there's a nexus between that requirement and this effort, if the department sees that as a possibility or not, I think would be good for the committee to know. And you can answer it now if you want.
Sure. As Dave said, yes, there is a requirement, but to be more specific, the requirement is for a feasibility study for a warm water swim facility at the Loafer Creek Recreation Area. There are some provisions in there to look at other locations, but the requirement is to give preference to that location. So we'll certainly do that. We'll go through that process and do that feasibility study, and other areas would be considered as well. So I'm sure there'll be some kind of comparison in the study. So but anyways, just to be clear, the requirement isn't just to go out and build a swim facility. It was to do that feasibility first.
Is that through the ORAC that those decisions are made?
No. So ORAC is part of the current FERC license that we have right now. What Dave's talking about is the new FERC license. Once it's issued, it has a new recreation plan. It's all part of the settlement agreement. That the Supplemental Benefits Fund is actually part of that. The Supplemental Benefits Fund was not waiting for license issuance. It was actually a contractual agreement to get it going right away. But the new license provisions, like this feasibility study and the other projects that are in there, trigger once the new FERC license is issued.
But I know, but for the like feasibility studies and whatnot, for those to move forward, isn't that usually done through ORAC?
No.
Okay.
Again, separate process.
I just know that through ORAC, there's usually recommendations for recreation.
Yes. So ORAC has a process for making recommendations that is different. So ORAC is part of the current FERC license right now. At ORAC meetings, if recommendations are made for recreation facilities, those go into a plan, or a report that's sent to FERC once every 2 years. We call it our biennial report. And we are in that biennial report year right now. So coming this spring, we will be doing that.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Zeitler, did you have a comment? Or?
Oh, yes.
You're good?
Oh, yes. Being the chair of the ORAC, I'd be glad to. We make recommendations all the time at that and have done consistently. The department has been very good at, especially in the new license, what I think Eric alluded to, there's a lot of work being done under the new license. I'm going to apologize to Randy, not only being a friend, but he's the first fish in the pool. So here's, and Dave started it off, economic return to the SBF was one of the things when we looked at the NOFAs originally. That meant money's coming back or other things coming back to the SBF. So I'm going to look for that for all projects, and I'm going to encourage that we look for that, because we only have a finite pool of money. We have $5 million for, and so I'm not going to get into that. So let's talk about other grants. My questions are to Randy, being the first one through. I would have liked to seen other grants fully identified, number-wise, funding-wise, questions that, money's coming. We need more than that, and I'll take it further than that. And the shade structures, David Pittman and I, and Randy also, are members of clubs. We have Rotary Park and other things. We've done shade structures. So I would have had you go out, get commitments from these other groups, bring that back. That reduces the amount of funding that we have to do. What I'm getting at is partnerships with, the city, the schools, the others, to offset the funding, give as much possible what we call bang for our buck. That's what we're looking for. The biggest problem I have is that the NOFA was originally supposed to be additional projects. So that meant when I was thinking we were going to have an additional pool, that's meeting the warm water facilities. I understand the interim, the interim in here at that point. Is it possible to add more out at that facility would be a question. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Zeitler.
If you'd like, I can address some of that.
Briefly, if you can. We've only gone through the consent in one item, and we're about an hour in.
The opportunity to partner with other agencies is certainly something that we would be willing to do. My goal is to secure whatever funding we can. If it's the $750,000 we're asking for, I still would work to partner with other groups and make that money go further. If it's within the desire of this committee to grant more, obviously things like enclosing the pool during the wintertime, et cetera, would be an option. And it is a revenue return because we are making more rentable space, whether it be the cabanas or the barbecues or whatever. We're making it more appealing. I don't know if you've been out there in the summertime. Well, you have. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So
that's why I was wondering if the trees and the grass.
Yeah, the trees.
Sure. Mr. Amberland.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I kind of alluded to Dave's question there as maintenance, and I think by going forward with this project, it'll require less maintenance on part of the district. Number two, we have naming rights are so valuable nowadays that it's called Nelson Complex. Now it can be called ABC Rentals too, and if they are willing to pay $150,000 back to the district for having naming rights there, that's another option where we're getting money back for having this facility being up to date, being modern, being safe for the community. So keep that in mind for any of these projects that naming rights are a big issue. I think we're going to try to do that with the amphitheater out of Riverbend. It could be huge value back. So, and again, this project I believe is shovel ready. I don't think we need additional permits. It's ready to go. No environmental things going on. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Mayor Reynolds.
I'm sorry, just one more time. A resource that I haven't heard to be tapped into, or this community's been very good to some people and contractors and families who would really be eager to get involved in something like this. And Member Carter had mentioned the park. I remember my dad donating all of the snack bars and bleachers and we were all out there working as kids on the weekend to donate this for the Little League in the community. There are a lot of resources for that. So personally, I'm looking at your deal, and 1.1 million seems low to me.
We could definitely use more. I'm trying to be realistic.
I'm subject to prevailing wage rules, and it cost me over $100 an hour per man.
Right.
So, and I know that this would fall under that. So, anyway, but, one of these things to be off, up from this proposal here would be to contact people to tap into those resources.
My office number is 533-2011.
Yes. Yeah, anything to do with kids around here, I think you're going to get a lot of support. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I believe we have a few comments from the public. Without any other comments from the dais, we're going to open up to public. At this point, we want to open this item up to public comment.
I have 3 public speakers on this item. Sunny Brandt, Tasha Levinson, and Richard Forehand.
Sunny Brandt, and I won't use notes.
Can you bring the mic closer to you, sir?
Sunny Brandt, and I won't use notes. I'd like to throw something else into this equation. I think the pool meets the criteria because it really hits what they took away, our swimming area. And that is a swimming area for Oroville, that small pool in Thermalito. So I'd say give it all the support you can. But how about a bridge that you can walk across, ride a bike across, or skateboard across on the Highway 70? This connects Thermalito with Oroville. It brings the Gymnastics Academy, Mitchell Stadium, Bird Street School within 2.1 miles of Nelson Pool. It brings Nelson School within 2.1 miles of the Gymnastics Academy, Bird Street School, and Mitchell Complex. Come on, let's put it together. And the district has a park property on the Thermalito side. Let's put river excursions there. There's your advertising money. Paddle boards, canoes, under the bridge. Do it.
Cool. Thank you, sir.
Tasha Levinson, also an Oroville resident. I very much am in favor of this project. I wanted to speak firstly to the past problems that they have had. When I've lived here since 2010, I've seen the Park District through a lot of different boards of directors. When I first came there, they were operating, putting out fire after fire after fire after fire. They finally began to get their budget under control, and by that time we had roughly $400,000 to $500,000 in maintenance problems that are now the $500,000. I think if we can pull this together, then it can be maintained at a reasonable cost. It was really the fire sale things that caused the problems in the past. Also, on the fencing, if you can do rose bushes or thorny plants near them, you can stop a lot of people from climbing over them very cheaply. Thank you.
Richard Forehand, Oroville. One of my daughters was on the swim team here. I want to commend the board, Feather River, for bringing this item up. I think it's essential for that area. Nelson Complex is more than just that pool. It's that school. You have the letter from the school. You have the letter from the Orcas. You have the ball fields out there. And if there's any area that would benefit by expansion, it's that area. So first, take care of what you've got. Show the state that you can take care of what you got. And then continue to improve, including the possibility of year-round. It's cost more money. The 1.1 may go up, but it would be money well spent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is that you in the queue, Mr. Reynolds?
No, sir.
Okay. At this point, either we can have the committee move this to the end for vote, or it appears there's a lot of support on the dais at this point. So I'm looking for a motion to either delay it to the end, decide together, or to make the decision now on this one.
I'd so move to move this forward now with some caveats. One for you, Scott, low income utilization, the pursuit of grants, the availability of solar coming involved with doing this, perhaps naming rights. Does that sound out of touch with your reality as far as what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
You know,
I will, as a representative of the district, we can take whatever money you think this project is worth and make it go as far as we possibly can by combining our efforts with contractors in the area, with other donors, by working with the Rotary maybe, and building some shade structures, whatever it takes. The idea is, let's make it happen, but we need a commitment of significant amount of money first.
Okay.
So to clarify, Mr. Emberland, I heard a couple of things. Just your caveats were an aggressive low-income family program, and then what was the second?
The utilization of solar energy for heating, and whether it be a battery backup system or just a passive type solar. As far as heating goes to pool, that would work for the winter. I know we get a lot of cloudy days, so it might have to be something else, but that includes more maintenance too. So we have to weigh out the two. So, but I would like to have that being considered.
Consideration.
Yeah, considered in the amount of money that we come to agreement on today, if we can do it today, would have those issues into it, and then the aggressive looking into naming rights and so forth, where we can get some money back, where the SBF can maybe get some money back as far as a revolving loan almost type of thing. So those are my three.
Can you?
So that would be
explain the naming rights one.
Naming rights would be somebody coming in and say, hey, I will be willing to pay you $150,000 for having that name for the next 3 years for ABC Construction.
I say looking into somebody sponsoring it with their name.
Yeah, and we do have somebody in the Park District that does some work for us occasionally that could help us do that.
So looking into that, or do they have to, or is your motion with they must get that before this is approved?
No, they don't have to get that before it's approved. I just want an agreement that we will be looking in. We want the bang for the money.
Right.
And you have to help doing that too.
Right.
It can't be just the SBF.
Right.
You have to help. Community has to help. Contractors have to help. So that's what I like to see.
Thank you, Mr. Emblin.
Okay.
We have
I move that we go forward with.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have a dollar amount?
That's what I was going to ask.
It sounds like he made a motion for the full amount. With a second?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Voting is open.
Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Again, so we've been here for an hour and 10, and we have 8 more to go. So I would ask everybody, including the board, to keep that in mind, myself. Otherwise, we need to bring up some burgers or something to feed everybody.
So 2 comments. One is for the audience, the consent agenda was approved. So if anybody's here for the consent agenda, those items have been handled. And based on what you just did, I believe you have about $1,050,000 left.
Right. Yep.
Moving on to 6B. Is there any motions or requests from the board for a presentation or questions for the Feather River Center at $1.228 million?
Oh, I'd like to have the presentation myself.
All right. We have representatives here from.
Yes.
Please state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Tony Catalano, and I'm the executive director at the Feather River Center. Could we have those slides? And I'd like to introduce our board. Also came today, and this is Colleen Milligan, Richard Silvera, Dee Dee Ferris, and Rich Briggs. Excuse me, a little nervous. Rich Briggs. Our board has been really active for the last year and a half in getting this project up and running and in organizing the Feather River Center from what we consider the ashes of the old Feather River Rowing Club. You did support the Feather River Rowing Club to the tune of about $100,000 in the last 5 years. The last time was 2015, and from the good use of those funds, we are here today to present you with our better economic development ideas we have. So this is the Feather River Center. Our mission is to promote education, recreation, boating, water safety, competitive water sports, and tourism in and beyond the Feather River watershed. Tourism is a major element of each of our growth areas. We're asking for funds to do the permitting and construction for an 8-lane 2K sprint rowing course on the North Forebay, to relocate create a sailing center on the South Forebay, and to lay the foundation for a boating instruction and safety center for outdoor recreation and education, as well, being a conference center for the North Forebay. Competitive Water Sports 1, we have a couple things to look at. We have Table Mountain and Chico State rowing clubs are operating out of the Forebay Aquatic Center. This 8-lane 2K Olympic-style rowing course can host sanctioned juniors, masters, and collegiate races. bring an international rowing team. Our big dream is to bring an international rowing team here in 2028 so they can practice for the LA Olympics. You know, Yale University was here a couple of years ago, and this year in 2019 in May, Yale University and Cal are bringing both of their rowing clubs to us to practice before their nationals, which take place in Sacramento. We envision some New Zealand. We have connections with New Zealand rowing and British rowing to come here to practice for the 2028 Olympics. They have to go somewhere. Why not here in Oroville? We anticipate $21,000 to $89,000 of revenue per event that we can hold when we start holding head races and sprint races here at the North Forebay. This is a major amount of money we're talking about, and we're real excited about it. Water Sports 2, Competitive Sports 2 is sailing. Butte Sailing Club, you know, was one of the original tenants out there at the Forebay. Water Resources built them a boathouse, I think it was 1995, and now they're part of the Feather River Center. We could have improved facilities for sailors on the South Forebay. We can host regional regattas down there. There's an excellent wind in that body of water, and the shape of the water is better for triangular race courses. It's a perfect location between Highway 99, Highway 70, and near I-5 to draw people from the Bay Area and beyond, as well as all the way up to Oregon. The third part is further down the road, but part of our process here. We'd like to get this Boating Instruction and Safety Center built. This is a picture of Humboldt States, one that's in Eureka. This would be a good conference center for the state or for the city and the county. We would anticipate rentals, comparable facilities at Sac State and at Humboldt State generate between $25,000 and $80,000 a year. What we're asking for in this application is new rental options and upgrades, boating and water safety upgrades. We're also working on Feather River trips with different groups, partnering with different groups. We're working on overnight outdoor ed experiences with schools. We can give people a better customer experience with this kind of facility. How are we going to do this? Well, these are sensitive environmental projects. They're going to take time to do it right and do it correctly. And the funding that you will be providing us will be used with Melton Design Group in coordination with state parks and water resources to complete all the CEQA and other permitting requirements. When we were hoping for SBF funding in 2019 and from private donors, 2019 we get the CEQA process going with construction, agency approvals, grants, and we can start to do rowing head races this year while the other projects are underway, and we could hold sailing regattas this year. 2020, we hope to have the rowing regattas going and the BIS construction going in another year, though it will probably take longer. Why? We can provide all generations with active sports, rowing if they want, competitive or recreational rowing. We have college students. We have young people can learn sailing. We have all of our programs offer special prices for underserved populations. This is going to be a great spur to economic development for the city of Oroville and Butte County. It's going to facilitate long-term growth and success and further integration with our partners. We're on state parks land, which is, you know, an advantage and a disadvantage. And so we're working with state parks. We're working with ORAC. We work with water resources. And we work with Division of Boating and Waterways and the city of Oroville in order to make Oroville a leader in Butte County. We wanted to, before I get your questions, I wanted to say a couple things. This is Richard put it in a good way this morning on the way over here. He said, this funding is going to provide the key to the engine of economic development here in Oroville. We're going to be able to leverage these funds with the state and with private donors and through grants to get these projects going and get these projects on track and developed in a timely manner. Now, everything takes a long time when you're working on state land, and we have CEQA to do, and we want to do everything right, but it takes a while. So we're hoping that with anything you can grant us, we can get started on these projects, and then we can again leverage these funds with the state of California, either through Prop 68, which I went to a meeting with Prop 68 in October, November, and they were funding agencies, city agencies, but they couldn't give money to state parks because they can't have state parks giving money to state parks because we're on a state park, so they couldn't give money to themselves. But we're uniquely positioned to leverage these state funds and to promote an influx of tourists into this area. The people that come in for rowing regattas, the people that come in for sailing regattas, the people that come in to take advantage of our conference center, and with new rental equipment and school equipment, outdoor ed equipment, we can encourage even more schools. As I've said in my other presentations, we've started serving my first year here. We served 950 kids. Last year we served 2,600 kids. And we already have schools calling us to make reservations now. One of our partners, Outdoor Education for All, received a grant of $1,200, which we are going to use for Paradise Elementary School, which is schooled at Bird Street right now. And we're going to get as many classes as we can out to from that school out to the Forebay for a free day of fun for them. And we're looking at more grants for that purposes to reach more kids in Paradise. And I have our board here. If you have questions about rowing, they can help answer those, and specific questions about sailing, they can help answer those. So I can answer all the rest of them.
Thank you. Yeah, we have two members three in the queue here. Mrs. Carter, Member Carter first.
I just have a couple of questions. Says the project would require the FERC and the Sequoia, did I say that right?
Sequoia?
Yes, Sequoia.
Yeah.
Approval.
Yeah.
Do we have that?
We have verbal approval and verbal cooperation from DWR. Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead.
We're working with Eric and Water Resources on all these projects. We do not have any approvals yet, any written approvals, and we haven't started that process. We were hiring Melton Design to help us get those projects going, but we need the funding to pay them to get the permitting process and the CEQA process going. But we have interest and support from our local agencies and statewide agencies.
Okay, and the other question I have is, do you have a one-year contract with the state parks? Could be problematic. However, the applicant, discussion to you, what's going to go on if you don't get the state park contract?
Well, I talked to Aaron Wright the other day about this again, and our contract has an automatic rollover provision where if we don't change anything, it automatically rolls over to the next year. In addition, he and Matt Teague are open to talking to us about a multi-year contract. And so as we move forward, we'll be working with state parks to satisfy their concerns about operating a boating instruction and safety center. That's their major concern. And as we can develop these projects, baby steps, however large we can make those baby steps, state parks is going to give us more leverage, and that's going to grant us leverage. So they're open to that.
Okay, and the other thing I see here is the matching funds are dependent on Proposition 68 in the amount of $7 million. How do we, and it's not available until 2020.
The Prop 68 funds, it turns out, we might not be eligible for. When I went to the meeting they had on those funds back in November, or October or November, that was when they said they can't give, State Parks was distributing the funds and they couldn't distribute it to any organizations that are on State Parks land. They can distribute it to Feather River Park and Rec and other city agencies for their recreation development, but not to us. However, we do have the office, we do have a connection with Cedric Mitchell at the Office of Community Involvement with State Parks, and he's heard about us and heard about our programs and our ideas, and he's very interested. He's supposed to be scheduling a meeting with Matt Teague and I to come up sometime in either this month or next to talk about ways to get us some support. But even without the Prop 68 money, there's still capital outlay money from the state. We've been down to James Gallagher's office. We went down and met with him last April, I think it was, and he signaled a lot of support for our projects too. So whatever we can get from Supplemental Benefits Fund, we can use to go out to the private sector. We can use to go after more grants.
But we still are not really sure if we have the matching funds.
That's correct.
At this time.
Matching funds, we have mostly, I guess, our board time is a matching fund. In a way, they put in hours and hours of volunteer time, but the cash, not yet.
Okay. And just another question is, because it's a state park, are we allowed, SBF, to give money to the state park, or is it just for the city of Oroville?
Well, we're a concessionaire of state park.
Okay.
So we're operating on state park property and DWR property, but we're a concessionaire of state parks. So SBF has our predecessor organization, the Feather River Rowing Club, has received startup funds from the SBF previously in 2014 and 2015, I believe.
And my last thing is, it's wonderful what you do out there. I think it's great.
Oh, thanks.
I love what you're doing for the children.
Nice.
I think the $1.2 million is a lot at this time, especially concerning about the matching funds. But thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Emberlin, member Emberlin in the queue.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Could you go back to the slide that represented the development of the South Forebay, what was it called?
Sailing
Community
Center.
Sailing Center?
Community Sailing Center, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Would that be, wouldn't be any new facilities?
Yes.
Is that where we could hold conferences, for instance? Or anything like that?
It would be new facilities. We project building a sailing building there with the flush toilets and storage area for boats, for safety. So there will be new construction. The idea of the conference center would be this building, and this would be on the North Forebay. Working with Eric and FERC on getting a change of use agreement from FERC to repurpose the existing small boathouse on the point to this, something like this. And that entails, we already have agreement from Butte Sailing Club because they are now part of the new Feather River Center organization. And what would happen is we would get that approval from FERC, and then we would relocate all the rowing club boats and facility to an area behind the existing large boathouse. And we would be able to start process work or whatever work that we could do in that area on that new boathouse or on that new conference center.
What would be the cost of that facility?
This is about $6 million. It's about up to $500 per square foot with build outs and furnishings, and we're looking at a facility that's 2 stories. That's about 10,000 square feet. It's going to have windows facing the west. It's going to have solar power. It's going to be able to have classrooms. We're going to be able to host weddings, celebrations of life. We can hold classes there. We could lease it out to whoever, and it would be great.
It wouldn't be overnight like a hotel type of thing.
No, it's not a hotel. No, people are going to stay at the hotel we hope to build. We hope somebody builds on the other side of the freeway from us. We think we're going to generate enough tourism that there's going to have to be another hotel at Garden Drive and Highway 70.
Thank you.
The Forebay Aquatic Center is definitely meets all the requirements in my book.
Thank you.
The other thing I had, 2 more questions. The grants, do we have anything that you could set up for us to see what would be possible?
Yeah, I'm applying. We're applying for some funds from North Valley Community Foundation for the Paradise campfire relief funds. Most of those funds are going to go to ideas we have about serving Paradise kids, whether located in Durham or Oroville, but bringing them here. I'm talking to Matt, and I'm talking to Boating and Waterways about grants that they might have to fund this kind of building. But what happened was we were at the top of the list for Boating and Waterways to build the next BISC, they called a Boating Instruction and Safety Center, but then they merged with state parks. And when they merged with state parks, it became more complicated for them to give money to fund a boating instruction center on state park land. It would be like giving money to themselves. So they're a little reluctant about that now. But James Gallagher, again, is supportive of our ideas, and we're hoping we can find a way, working with Matt Teague and State Parks and Eric with Water Resources, to find ways to get that funding available so we could do this building.
Okay. Then no permit work has been done at all?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We don't have any funding to get that going yet.
Thank you.
I'm done. Thank you. Yep.
Mr. Pittman? Member Pittman?
Thank you. Tony, I think your facility is the poster child for the SBF.
Oh, thank you.
In terms of the success story that's occurred. And I see the energy out there. Are you still practice rowing at 5 o'clock in the morning? 5:15.
They're taking it easy. Colleen, when are you out there?
Awesome. We are out there by 5:30.
Chico State's out there at 5:30, 2 or 3 days a week. Table Mountain are out there at 5:15, a couple days a week, and 7 o'clock on Saturdays.
So I think all the attendees in the audience are invited to attend.
Oh, yeah.
5:50.
If you want to row.
There's room on your boat still? Wow.
Yeah, thank you. And I have seen your operation, and certainly it's a success story that's going on. One thought I had when you talked about the BISC, and just because I know we had a discussion about having some kind of pedestrian bridge.
Oh, right.
Somewhere in the low flow area or the project area. And my thought came about, I wanted to just say this before I forgot about it, because sometimes I forget real quick. Having a pedestrian bridge from the state park over to the Nelson complex, and then maybe the BISC could be built at the Nelson complex. Different land as a thought.
It's an idea.
It's
you
just
know,
an idea
the
thrown out
Feather
there.
River conceptual plan includes a bridge, a walking and cycling bridge from the playfields to the North Forebay State Recreation Area.
It's just maybe a way to get around the
maybe it is.
bureaucracies of it.
Maybe it
the
is.
other item I had is, of course, you know, we're running short on our funding, and I appreciate in your grant application you put some goals together and some dollar amounts to those goals. And I'm just going to ask you, if we funded goals 2 and 3, which would equate to a lesser amount, what might that picture be?
What we would request would be not to fund specifically any particular goals. We separated the project at recommendation of Bob and Jordan for clarity.
Right.
But all projects are connected and are comprehensive and are interdependent. So if you funded us, whatever funding you would fund us, we would like the ability to have our board look at that bulk of money and then determine how to best distribute it among our projects so that we can have all the projects move forward.
And let me ask staff, I believe that's kind of been done in the past in these goal projects where we provide a dollar amount and then let the applicant return back with the plan.
Try to get the mic on. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Yes, we have. However, if you were to grant a dollar amount, whatever the dollar amount is, and if the what I just heard Tony say is that the board would then look at that dollar amount, they would have to come back for a reapproval from the SBF to utilize the funds in a different direction.
Right.
Yes. And we
Right,
have.
and that's not a
and
problem.
we have done that in the past.
Okay.
And that's and again, Dave, just about goal 1 to create this 8-lane sprint rowing course. That's going to bring in the most money.
Oh, yeah.
That's a major economic development piece.
Oh, and I appreciate that.
So
I'm
we
just,
don't want it
I'm
to
just one of these guys up here who's got to cut the cut the check somewhere along the line.
Okay.
Thank
We're
you.
fine. And we would come back with proposals for your approval,
Right.
whatever you granted us, however you wanted us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We got one more member in the queue, Mayor Reynolds.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I think what you guys do are great. My family really enjoys
Thank
that
you.
out there.
Thank you.
Well, do you have a lease agreement or something with the state? How are you're using that property under what sort of agreement?
We have a concession agreement with the state parks. And that rolls over annually, and we're in discussions with them about extending it to a 3 to 5 year contract instead of an annual contract. They've kept our fees down low to help us get started, and so they're going to maintain that. But we have a really good relationship with state parks. I think we pay our bills on time and things like that.
So everything that you would do out there, all of the structures that you would build, and that would be the property of the state?
Yes. Unless one idea Matt Teague had was to duplicate what they did up at Burning Falls, where we would raise the money to build the building, the BISC, and then state parks, and then what did he say would happen? We would raise the money to build a BISC, then we would have a 25 or 30 year lease on it, and to operate it, and then it would belong to state parks. So we would have. So that's one of our options, just to raise $5 million to build that thing.
Yeah, I would think that would be a goal. I mean,
well,
because,
it is. We're
on somebody else's property, you never know.
I know. Well, his idea is the goal. You mean? Well,
Yes.
it could be.
Yeah, I thought
could
that
be
was
if we had that footbridge across there. That'd make life real easy.
Yeah. Okay,
Certainly something to consider.
Thank you.
Chuck.
How much money since what the consent calendar and with the first item? Can you remind us again what is remaining?
So after approving the consent, you spent $352 and $260, and then so far we have also approved the $750 for Nelson Complex. So you have approved $1,102,260.
So what's remaining is?
So your remaining is, if at this, I guess we could bring up at this point, if you would like to combine your revolving loan fund and the remainder of your marketing fund, you can do that. That's up to the steering committee. What's been spent from the project fund is $1,059,240. That's what's left. Sorry.
What's left?
Yes.
Okay.
In the project fund.
And again, my suggestion would be to hear the presentations, to solicit questions from the board, but not necessarily have them answer them now. Provide them to them in writing, have them return, so you can balance these against each other. I mean, clearly it's an advantage to go first or second and spend the money and not necessarily have your priorities the way you want them.
Yeah.
So that's my suggestion. You have the presentations, the folks sit down, whoever wants to speak to it can speak to it, but the questions then Jackie can transcribe. We will send them to the applicant. They can provide a written response, and then you can all react, and that way you can evaluate the proposals against each other.
I completely agree with that. And for the record, for everybody knows, for my sake, going through these, I've already had these proposals for a while, and just for clarity, Nelson Pool was at the top of my list. So just so people don't think that we just haphazardly said, "Oh, it sounds good."
Yeah, I've had mine for about 3 weeks. So.
Mr. Thompson, excuse me, Colleen would like to have the floor.
Please.
Is that
You have a-
possible?
I'm part of
Yeah,
the,
go ahead.
She's there.
Okay.
Is that okay? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
State
Hi.
your name.
I'm Colleen Milligan. I'm part of the FRC board. One of the things I just wanted to sort of clarify in our proposal, and particularly because of your questioning about can we section out some of our projects between 1, 2, and 3, and what would be feasible in terms of funding part of it versus all of it. And one of the things that I just want to make sure that we convey on our part is that over the course of the last 2 years, we've thought a lot about how to be an economic development for the community of Oroville, not just to be a facility for the community itself, but to generate entrepreneurship for the area. And I think in light of the Camp Fire particularly, where we've lost a lot of infrastructure in the county for businesses, especially in the Paradise area, this is one opportunity where the infrastructure is already laid to immediately bring money and economic development to businesses in the Oroville area specifically. And I think in that sense, what we are hoping to do is to have a good partnership with the overall community, but also with different entities in the community to expand, and especially in the next few years, make an immediate impact to improve the community and the funds that overall we have available to us, especially with some of the losses available. When we put together some of these plans, especially for the rowing end, which is a little bit obscure, these are based on facilities in the state that already exist that generate millions of dollars every year. Sacramento State is a good opportunity in that sense, and Humboldt State is one as well. We have better water than Sac State does, and quite frankly, the U.S. National teams for rowing would prefer our facility over Sac State's for training on their teams, which means that's a major commitment at a national level as well as at a regional level for Oroville specifically. And we think that in that, especially when we're looking at matching funds, this is something that is a priority on our part to look at how viable we can be in the immediacy, even as we are seeking permits, and whether or not we can make an impact in the immediacy, and we think we can on that end. And I just want to follow up on that.
Thank you. Chair Thompson, I had a couple of questions too, when you get a chance.
Mr. C, you have the floor.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to also compliment you, Tony, and the program that Feather River Center has going on out there. It's been very impressive, and every time I've gone out there, it seems like there's more people in the summertime. So it's nice to see that, especially the kids. But I had a question. First of all, regarding the rowing facility. So did the dollar amount include construction of the facility, or was that for the permitting, planning, and design?
Permitting, planning, design, and construction.
Okay, that is a construction as well. Okay. And do you have an idea how long it would take before the plans would be able to be reviewed? And
boy, that, Eric, I couldn't tell you. I'm new to this whole process, so I would hand it off to Melton Design Group and you, and then we would take whatever steps we had to take, to make it happen and follow whatever timelines exist.
Okay.
Typically, I don't know, 2 years, a year. The rowing regattas, the sprint races, will bring in really a lot of people and a lot of money. In the meantime, we're going to do something they call head races, which allow you on a curved or a turn course. And we did one when was that, September? Fall. And we want to have, we're getting on the U.S. rowing calendar for 2019 to have 2 or 3 of those this fall to get started to show you what we can do with something better. Other questions? Excuse me.
Okay, sure. So another question I had was regarding so let me back up. Regarding the BISC facility, DeOtterBarrow's primary interest, we've had several meetings and discussions about that. DeOtterBarrow's primary interest has been with the BISC facility, so I certainly would encourage you to continue that, and we'll continue on our side to do what we can for promoting that.
Do you have money?
No. No. That's what the SBF is for, potentially. There are other sources, but in any way, I just want to point out that's been our primary interest. And support has been with that. And it's not that we're against these other projects. It's just that we don't, we're really not there yet with them. We need to see more as far as what they're all about. Regarding the sailing center at the South Forebay, so. As I read through the document, it sounds like this. So this is for equipment that would be purchased. It's not going to be to construct the facility. So I'm wondering what happens if the facility isn't constructed. What happens with that equipment? Are you going to hold off to purchase the equipment until the facility is built, or
No, the equipment, the rental equipment and education use equipment we would use with our current programs in the current building. and kind of we see it as preparation for the new building. We want to encourage more people to come out, so it's partly marketing to show shiny new things that they could rent. Is that the equipment you're asking about?
No. So that was goal 3. That equipment. I'm talking about the equipment in goal 2. That is like a couple of outboard motors, some you know, some boats.
We need those. We need safety launches for our rowing programs and for our sailing programs. Right now we have this, I don't know how old it is, this Boston whaler that just drives me crazy because it breaks down all the time. And it's not really safe. We need people, a couple boats like that for safety launches. So we're proposing to use some of these funds to buy a safety launch, a wakeless launch for our rowing programs and a wakeless launch for our sailing programs, both groups of which would share those. And then we'd have better equipment and better safety equipment on the water. So those would be stored wherever we could put them in the lake there.
Okay.
And I think we'd have to work with state parks and you about extra docking facilities perhaps, or a special place where they'll be safe. Okay. Are those the ones you're asking about?
That's what I meant, because in the as you read through the document, the proposal talks about the that sailing center being in the biennial report that DWR is going to be submitting later on this year. Right. And I just want to make it clear, the way that biennial report process works, all of the recommendations that are made by the ORAC committee, the Oroville Recreation Advisory Committee, go into that biennial report. Right. So the filing of that proposal in the biennial report doesn't mean that DWR necessarily supports the proposal. It's a recommendation. That's the process that FERC has set out. So the recommendation was actually made by ORAC. And the recommendation was for DWR to construct the facility. So and so that's what's going to be going into this proposal, along with DWR's comments to that proposal. And DWR hasn't prepared its comments yet.
Good.
So just want to make it clear that's what the process is.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
That was it.
One last quick comment for me.
Mr. Bittman.
Yeah, just one last quick comment, really. And again, I'm just repeating you as a poster child for this organization, but I want to put it in the minutes, and you can say it's from Committee Member Pittman, that Mr. Haynes and state water contractors ought to take a look at your facility for maybe some supplemental work, because I believe, it's pretty clear and evident that you could generate a world-class facility here. So outside of the settlement agreement and others, I hope that state water contractors reads the minutes and hear my words. Okay. We would encourage an additional support for your facility.
And we totally support that.
Thank you.
Mr. Steindorf?
Yeah, so following on Mr. Landau's suggestion about questions going out to the applicants and then getting back to the committee before we next get together, I actually have another one for Mr. C about doing at least a cursory check with the department to make sure that what is being proposed, particularly with the excavation of that peninsula, to make sure that's consistent with DWR's project purposes, et cetera. I mean, what we don't want to have happen is have these guys go down and have a bunch of effort, and then DWR come back and say, "Oh, we can't do that." So, do you think that's doable between now and then?
Well, we certainly could respond to that, but we need to see what the project is. I mean, right now what we have is the kind of very high level drawing, but it doesn't really identify like amounts or how heavy equipment's going to get out there. Is it going to be barged out there? Is it going to be tracked vehicles? What type of wetlands impacts? Those kinds of things. We really don't know. Right. If they are going to excavate, is the material going to be removed, or is it just going to be moved to other locations in the water body? I mean, those kinds of things would need to be known before you could really be able to provide a precise answer.
Would it be possible to get that list of questions to these guys? I just want to help them along, so they don't bring you a rock and then you go, no, not that rock, and get another one. Just some guidance around what types of things they might ask, because again, to have them, they've already spent a lot of time on this. I mean, there's enough there, I think, on the page to at least say they want to excavate that peninsula. It's going to have to be deep enough to float a boat. Are there any things that just run afoul of project operations specifically?
I mean, we can come up with a list, certainly, yes.
Good.
Mr. Silvera asked if he could respond to Mr. C's question, correct?
Oh, I could, but I'm Richard Silvera, the Beach Sailing Club representative on the Feather River Center. Just as a closing image for the future, for 4 or 5 years from now, Oroville has a beautiful living resource in the north and the south forebays, and they are at the doorstep of introduction to the city of Oroville from all traffic coming in from the north. The activities that we provide there on the water are not only aesthetically pleasing, they are educational. They accommodate many youth groups in the form of lessons, and that facility is a prime example of what environmental development properly done can accommodate. It preserves the natural surroundings, thereby maintaining the educational value. It's perfect water conditions. In other words, it can be windy, but the waves aren't really high and dangerous. It's a perfect, the South Forebay in particular, looking to the future, would be a perfect facility for what I think will eventually be state-mandated powerboat training, particularly for young drivers of ski boats, and the opportunities for future incomes on these two body of waters, as well as being attractive to vacationers, is very high. And I've been sailing out there with many members of the club for 30 years, and we're always there. The types of sports that we're recommending are not new. They're not faddish. They're among the most classic water sports that exist, and staples of youth groups around the country. So we have this resource, and to whatever degree this committee can justify funding the rapid expansion that in these programs that we've already started in the past few years in particular, we can keep the ball rolling to leverage those funds into more outside contributions, not only in signaling to the other state agencies that yes, this is what Oroville City really wants to see, for the state to give additional investments. So those are the types of fundings that we talk about at our board meetings.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
At this point, I don't see any more members in the queue. We'd like to open this up to public comment. Please be reminded that your comments are limited to 1 minute each.
I have one public speaker, Sonny Brandt.
Tony, congratulations. And you're doing a wonderful thing. I propose we move you down to the Feather River. Turn the whole program over to you. Doing exactly what we want. Exactly. But where's he doing it? He's doing it in the State Water Project. What did they do? They gave us $50 million for outside the State Water Project for us to use. Oh, that's nice. But we could take it and put it back to the state. I don't know. We need to get him out of the state and onto our property. Nelson, Feather River.
There you go. Thank you. I want to make a recommendation for... Take a break. We have a request for break. Let's take a 5-minute break. And again, let's come back at maybe 55, 56 after. So far, our time on each one is nearing 45, 50 minutes each. So for the sake of everybody, let's... All right, 5-minute recess.
I can see a smell of lawsuit.
Okay.
Hey, Scott.
You mean about the... Jeez.
he's got to get the other 5 to agree to.
Oh yeah, exactly. You bet. That's what I use it for. I have a orchard and farm, and I still have my tractors over in the roof out. It's wonderful. Yes. Yes, I know. And people just overlook it until it's. I don't know why. Either. I wish I knew. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Yeah, but yeah, I would definitely any new facility. That would be my first goal. Hey, let's look at solar, whether it be passive or storage or type, whatever it could be. That's right. Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. 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 All right. Thank you.
It's important that, I think a lot of projects are important, and that's why I'm asking some questions. Because I think there's a lot of good things going on. But,
I just hate to drag these on another.
Hey, nice to meet you. We haven't officially, we've been
here together several times.
Yeah, that ad hoc there one time.
Oh, that's right. Well, speaking, so I just wanted to your point. Anything that's within project boundaries has to be approved by the that's not a big deal. The other thing is, all these projects have to, well, everything where they're going to do the ground equipment has to go through sequence. And there's no U in sequence. Right. Well, and the other thing is, I mean, I hate to say it, the project and I get that, but just I would be careful that you don't get yourself into that. Well, but the first one is one thing that I am going to recommend, we should really go through. How are they going to define it? Really can't know. It's a huge document, because that is the guidance document, right? And so I know, I just said on the right, so, well, and there's some issues in that, in what's in the script. Right, well, and so that's really the guidance document for how, in theory,
We're at the exchange thing, so I have to get any cheap stuff because we ate lunch there. So I should have said I had my last meal. You know, I should have prepped by that. I had to go.
I'm getting hungry now.
Where yeah. What's that? It's already passed, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
15 minutes or 20 minutes.
Well, it's in there 10.
It's in there 10.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I think people are confused by that, thinking that we haphazardly, like, no, that was, yeah, for me, it was.
I think
we'll keep it at 10, but it's the question and answer that's taking it over. So that's the point. I'd like to call this meeting back to order.
Hi, Randy. How you doing? He's here somewhere.
think we're looking for. Sure. And Scott, yeah. Thank you for that. Looks like we went over our break. Again, as a recap, a couple of things. Number one, on the packet, some things we want to clean up regarding the presentation time for 10 minutes. That right? And I know, again, you have a room full of passionate people, and a great way to divide a family is to throw money and have everybody, jump at it. So again, as another point of clarification, I know that there's some sentiment in the room that being unfair for the Nelson, we're doing our due diligence, number one, to make it fair for everybody. But again, I've already clarified it after that vote. That for me, we've had this packet as a board, we've had this packet for a while. And so we can look on there and say, well, this is something for me is already a done deal. Want to move forward, get it out of the way. I feel that some of you may feel that that was unfair, but if the decision in seeing the money that's available and already on our side, having that off the board and seeing what's left is actually more beneficial and helpful for us in moving forward. At this point, for the sake of all of our time and our sanity, I would like to actually address us as a board and our peanut gallery, our counselors, to try to do our best to minimize the comments and the questions. Tom, you had a recommendation regarding submitting questions in writing, or what was that specifically you asked?
Well, what I was suggesting, and I was suggesting it initially, is that you have the presentations in front of you. That I was thinking that you'd have very short presentations clarifying anything they submitted, that you would then be able to ask them questions they wouldn't necessarily answer, that we would take it down, we would provide it to them, they would give you a written response, and you would take the responses and the remaining applications against the criteria and then award the money. Have a second meeting where you would then award whatever you thought was appropriate to award.
The thought of the members on that? I'd like some feedback from the dais on that recommendation.
Personally, I'd like to hear as many presentations as we can today, so we move forward.
Mm-hmm. And then, as far as the submitting questions, Mr. Pittman,
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, that will help this, and again, our sanity, because we keep asking and going back and forth with some of the questions that even the council already know the answers to those that are in the packet. But anyway, at that point, then the next applicant would be the Stage Theater. So I'm sure that we want to see a presentation on that.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Mall, and I'm president of the State Theater Arts Guild, better known as Stage. I'm here today requesting up to $1.5 million from the Supplemental Benefits Fund to continue the ongoing restoration and preservation of the historic State Theater in downtown Oroville. It was 50 years ago this past May that then Governor Ronald Reagan and then U.S. Supreme Court Justice and former California Governor Earl Warren stood 5 miles from where we are right now to dedicate the cornerstone of the California State Water Project, Lake Oroville. 1 month earlier, in April 1968, the historic State Theater celebrated its 40th anniversary as the jewel of the downtown business district. And this past April, our community joined in the celebration of the theater's 90th anniversary That celebration allowed Stage to unveil the installation of the historic Wurlitzer Theater organ. That organ project, incidentally, represented a fundraising effort of $150,000, primarily from local sources. This, combined with 9,000 hours of volunteer time and thousands of dollars in in-kind services, makes the Oroville Historic State Theater one of fewer than 200 in the nation with an operating theater organ. As a bit of background, the State Theater is owned by the City of Oroville, and in July of 2014, Stage entered into an agreement to relieve the city of its day-to-day costs of operating the theater. The city administrator at the time said that agreement would save the city more than $100,000 per year, because no longer would city employees have to open and close the theater, or change the marquee, or turn on the heating and air conditioning, or clean the theater after each event. Many theater events occur on the weekends, so city employees were either paid overtime or would have to adjust their weekday schedules to accommodate the hours spent at the theater. In addition, the city is no longer responsible for such mundane items as light bulbs, batteries, paper towels, toilet paper, and cleaning products. As much as possible, Stage shops Oroville businesses for both goods and services. These are local employers hiring local people and generating local sales tax dollars. This is a partial list of the people we have used: Comer's Print Shop, Tong Fong Load, Jimmy's Trophies, Executive Cleaning, Mug Shots, Better Deal Exchange, Big Cat Limousine, The Patio, Oroville Safe and Lock, Cresco Equipment, Dan's Electric, Home Depot, Hauser's Music, Odd Dog Design, The Exchange, and Purple Line Winery. In addition, Recology and Metalworks have provided significant cash and in-kind donations. Again, these are local businesses providing local jobs for local citizens and generating local sales tax revenue. We also recommend local restaurants when catering events are required at the theater. It's easy to think of the theater solely as a performing arts center. It's actually much more than that. The State Theater is the largest and, I believe, the most comfortable event facility in our community. The original licensing proposals for Lake Oroville called for the construction of a hotel and a convention center. Nearly 20,000 people a year pass through the doors of the State Theater. While many attend concerts and musical programs and ballets, they also attended meetings on the spillway emergency. They attended a town hall meeting with Representative Doug LaMalfa. They attended city council candidate forums, award ceremonies, and graduations. Our organization is made up primarily of volunteers. We are extremely nimble and flexible. And as an example, the Northern California Ballet Company right now is rehearsing for a performance of The Nutcracker at the State Theater this weekend. Their performances were originally scheduled for the Paradise Performing Arts Center. That, of course, no longer an option. Their performance at the State Theater this weekend will be the first time that company has ever been accompanied by a live orchestra with members from the Paradise Symphony. To accommodate the performance required Stage to reschedule our work projects that we had online for January. It also necessitated the removal of the cover over the orchestra pit for the first time in more than a decade. With 4 performances this weekend, it will introduce hundreds of people to Oroville and its proximity to the Feather River. In recent months, your theater has also hosted community meetings on the campfire disaster, hearings on the marijuana issue and ordinance, the debris removal discussions conducted by FEMA. And another meeting this month is also scheduled with the county to further discuss the debris removal. Those nearly 20,000 people come from all parts of the county and beyond. They shop in downtown Oroville and they frequent local restaurants. One of the efforts Stage will initiate with the funds you approve is a promotional video in cooperation with the Downtown Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Oroville Riverfront District, and Oroville Hospital. The video will be shown prior to all theater events and highlight the beauty of the Oroville area as well as the many recreational, business, and professional opportunities afforded in Oroville, along the Feather River and near Lake Oroville. Stage recently secured $750,000 from the Oroville RDA. We're dedicating those funds as our 50% match for our request this afternoon. It's the ultimate goal of Stage to acquire the theater from the city of Oroville. The funds you approve will allow us to accomplish the following. First, an upgrade to the solar array and to replace the roof. This will make the theater more self-sufficient with utilities, as well as protect the interior investments that Stage has made and will continue to make in the theater. I had Joyce Townsend hand out a picture of the historic marquee that, as it appeared in 1953, 25 years after the theater opened. The funds you approve will include the restoration of the marquee as you see it depicted. The funds will also allow us to conduct a thorough hazmat assessment as well as renovate the lobby. Right now, Stage has a restoration expert at the theater to advise us on the critical steps necessary to renovate the lobby. The individual also worked on the restoration of the Paramount Theater in Oakland. The Paramount provides a vision of what your state theater can look like in the future. The funds you approve are a down payment on the $7.5 million restoration project that will bring the theater back to the original glory of opening night in April 1928. That began the theater's period of greatest influence in our community. The major restoration effort will require closure of the theater and represent a significant loss of revenue to Stage in the interim. Some of the funds we are currently in the process of raising will help us bridge that revenue gap. The theater is listed on the National Historic Register and was designed by famed California architect Timothy Pfluger. Mr. Pfluger assisted in the design of the San Francisco Stock Exchange, the Bay Bridge, the World's Fair in 1939 on Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay, and the Mark Hopkins Hotel. Since taking over the operations of the theater, Stage volunteers have put in almost 30,000 hours verifiable of volunteer time at the theater. Using the national metric to put a price tag on volunteer time, that adds up to $750,000. We have a lot of work to do, but our group is up to it. Like the Feather River and Lake Oroville, the historic State Theater in downtown Oroville is an integral part of the quality of life of Oroville. Our goal for the historic State Theater in downtown Oroville is to save it from a fate similar to the one that soon will face the State Theater in Marysville. That building someday will have a date with the wrecking ball. We call the restoration and preservation of the historic State Theater the miracle on Myers Street. With that in mind, I'd like to close with a quote from Og Mandino, author and speaker. Every memorable act in the history of the world is a triumph of enthusiasm. Nothing great was ever achieved without it, because it gives any challenge or any occupation, no matter how frightening or how difficult, a new meaning. Without enthusiasm, you are doomed to a life of mediocrity, but with it, you can accomplish miracles. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is it the goal, Mr. Thompson, then, that the group will ask questions that will then be submitted to us, that we will respond in writing? Was that my understanding?
If that's the committee's pleasure. I mean, I don't know if I got direction on that.
Thank you.
I'm also going to have Joyce hand out a copy of my presentation for your review. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, I had one question, if you could, real quick. And I was looking through your packet. It's well done. One question I have, because people have asked me if the ability of the theater to start using the balcony, I know that's a dollar amount. Do you actually have a dollar amount to, and the reason I'm asking that question is because then you'd potentially be up to the 1,000-seat theater, which
right. That is the magic number for performing arts.
Okay.
Our biggest challenge has nothing to do with the rumor that has been in town for some time that there's some kind of safety issue. There is not.
No, I'm not.
The real issue is both access and the fact that a few years ago a local company backed in and took out our second floor fire escape, which will have to be completely reconstructed. So currently that's not one of the top priorities for our project of work.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any public comment on this?
I have one public speaker, Sunny Brandt.
In the interest of saving time, I'll just say I support all these organizations, all the things they're doing, but other than the Veterans Memorial Hall, my criteria isn't met by the others. So I'll just say no now. That's the way I would vote. Good night.
We have two members in the queue. We have Mr. Emberland and then Mayor Reynolds. And then Carter.
What a commanding voice you have, sir.
Thank you.
To all those that are on the committee, if you haven't, or if in the audience here, if you haven't gone on a tour of the State Theater, I mean a real tour on it, which I was granted by Stan down there. Stan here today?
Yes.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, hey Stan. He even offered to let me play the Orson Welles organ, the pipe organ, the concert organ. So I got to get down there and do that. But it's tremendous what you're doing. Love the idea. I'm a historical fan of anywhere, and to have something like this brought back to life is, to me, very good. And talk about bringing people into this community. I think we would accomplish that by your work there. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Reynolds?
Yeah, Jim, I'd just like to say I just love hearing you speak. You could read the newspaper to me and I'd be entranced.
Thank you.
And what you're doing is absolutely wonderful in the whole community, not just in the stage development, but in the whole community. When my mother worked at the State Theater in 1946, it cost 11 cents to get in, but it was 75 cents for the loges.
Yes, yes. Well, we have a tremendous volunteer group that has really pulled this together and made things happen. And to be honest with you, when the city handed us the keys in 2014, I could not have envisioned we would have accomplished this much in this period of time.
Totally.
And I'm a pretty positive guy.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Carter?
I would just like to say thank you. I've been involved a lot in a lot of plays and drama and dance in the theater, and it's wonderful. And all of these things are really needed. And I think it's such an asset to our community. My concerns are that the $1.1 million is going to just do some of these things, but still we need $7.4 million to bring it back up. And sometimes,
sorry.
It's beautiful and we want to do that, but it's like, what could we build for $7 million?
Well, I think the big thing is that, first of all, reconstructing something with the historical significance would be far, far greater than that. The other thing that I think is involved here is that the restoration really recaptures a very critical time in Oroville's history in 1928. $7.5 million is a big number. We're all aware of that. Going forward with the idea that Stage would like to acquire the State Theater at some point in the future will also open up a significant number of both private and public grants that we're not currently eligible for because the city is the owner of the building. So we think that part of our plan will be taken in steps, but certainly when that transition happens, I think we'll find ourselves significantly in a better position to go after other money.
Okay. And the other thing is, definitely I've been in there when it's raining and it leaks. The roof leaks. The other thing that I think is really important is your sound system. Because I know it needs a lot of work in the sound system. So I'm just saying, amazing thing, but like I said, there's a lot of projects for us to look at, and I didn't know if we can look, like, what do you feel is the most important of all of the 7 items?
Well, I believe the first and foremost goes back to your comment just now, the roof. The roof, we have truly used bubble gum and baling wire to keep the roof from leaking. We have a really active volunteer group that actually goes up on the roof, something I have avoided doing personally, to make sure that all of the drains are clear because leaves get into the drains and back water up. So we've had far fewer incidents of leaks in the theater in the last year and a half than in the past for that reason.
Good.
I believe the roof is number one. Certainly the sound system upgrade would be one. We're also anxious to get started on the lobby. I don't know that I've answered your question or made your decision any easier.
They're all important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Seeing no more comments from the dais or from the community, want to move on to the next item.
Point of order, Scott.
Yes, sir.
Tom, should we dictate now to the clerk as far as the questions?
I think
first in our mind, and then move on to the next participant.
It actually seemed as though they were asked just now, but if you have more, then certainly provide them to Jackie. You don't need to provide it this second.
We don't have to voice them over here.
No, but you ought to get them to her the next day or two, so everybody gets a chance to look at them, as well as obviously they have a good chance to respond.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. I'll go right to Jackie. Right? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
If you would rather skip a step, I would.
Jackie's transcribing. They could also go to Jordan. We were just talking about who actually administered. I just thought it'd be easier for Jackie to transcribe them, but if it's easier for you to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
For Jim, on the replacing a roof, was there an estimate made for that you guys have?
The estimate is $1 million.
Okay, gotcha. So we have a breakdown.
And we do have, of course, the matching funds from the RDA that'll be part of that.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Mr. Mole. Next item on our list is Feather River Recreation and Parks District, request for $970,000.
If I could add Mayor Reynolds' comment about Jim's voice, he can read the IKEA instruction manual, and I would like to hear it.
You can let's give you a minute here while everybody's.
Thank you all for coming.
By the way, Jim, I'm a member of Stage now, so that you know, okay? So is that a call? That's fine.
You don't have to leave just because I'm up here again.
Mr. Huber, being a member of Stage do I have to recuse? Because I don't have any fiduciary benefit from being a member.
You would only have a problem if you
received money,
received a financial benefit from Stage. Being a member of Stage is actually, arguably, is the opposite of that because you're paying money to be a part of Stage.
Okay, just for clarification.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
All right, those that are leaving, if you could please, for remaining, do it quietly while we move forward.
If you don't leave, we can't miss you.
Murphy, right?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. If I could have my slides up. So this is about the land purchase and related costs for the 10 parcels adjacent to the activity center, and subtitled this, Preserving Space for Future District Needs. So like my previous presentation, I've mostly just taken some photos of the area around, and I've got a few comments about it. So this is the aerial view, obviously Mitchell and Feather River Boulevard intersection. kind of in the left center of the page is the activity center. The parcels we're talking about are immediately to the north or up toward Mitchell, from that motel on the corner of Mitchell and Feather River, and that vacant land all the way behind it along that strip behind our building adjacent to the multifamily, as well as those two parcels directly across Mitchell. So it's about 7¼ acres in total. This is just some ground level view of the ground, of the area down Mitchell toward Feather River on the right hand side. This is another picture there. And mostly it's vacant, as you can tell. There's some growth there of non-native species that we've talked to the adjoining property owner about treating, and I believe he did once, but it needs to be done again. That area of trees there in the back is also a population of homeless live in there, so that's been an ongoing issue. So this, like I said, this is just a view of the surrounding property around the activity center. This is the fence line. North on the left side of the picture is north toward the vacant properties, and then back toward the back of the parcel, and then that's kind of the back corner where the parcel, basically our parcel ends, and then the parcel behind us ends where those two mounds of dirt are, kind of in the lower center of the photo. This is an artist, this is Mr. Melton's rendering of one concept of the use of the property. I would like to clarify that we are not asking for funds to build this specific project. We are asking for funds to purchase the 10 parcels, which include 8 immediately adjacent to the activity center, along with the 2 that are on the north side of Mitchell. This is, again, just a conceptual idea about what we could do with the property should this committee offer to or allow us the funds to do it. This is a breakdown of component parts of the estimated cost to purchase the 10 parcels. It's $868,000. Real estate title and recording fees of about $54,000. I did speak to an appraiser and somebody in a title office to get these numbers. Perimeter fencing was based on a cost per linear foot, and appraisals, again, based on information that I received from somebody at a real estate company, an appraisal company gave me that information. Total of $970,000. I don't break it down by parcel for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have to negotiate. So if they know specifically how much was given, then it makes it, puts us in a little more difficult position negotiating. It's like playing poker with all your cards face up. Additionally, that I did use an appraisal that was done about 2.5 years ago and extrapolated the costs across that. And one of the larger parcels across Mitchell was for sale recently, and I used that cost. It did not sell, which suggests it might be worth less, but nonetheless, that was as far as the cost per square foot for the parcels that I did have appraisals for was pretty consistent. So these numbers are hopefully high, but then again, given the recent campfire disaster, it might now be low. I mean, obviously we don't know until the appraisals are done, but for purposes of public use, and I think Mr. Huber can back me up on this, the appraisal has to be done for the highest and best use of the property. Arguably now the highest and best use of property is probably multifamily housing. So that has to be considered. That doesn't mean they can get it or we would have to pay it, but that's what their appraisal would be based upon. An interesting point to talk about is this artist rendering does not include the 2 parcels across Mitchell. I believe those were included in the request to simply give us additional space, but about half of the property value asked is just for those 2 parcels as far as what the estimate was. So one of the potential options is to secure the properties immediately around on the south side of Mitchell, immediately around the activity center, and leave that for potential future somebody else had developed, or if it's still available when and if we ever get the project going and have some use for that property, we could look to acquire it at that time. I did also suggest in the proposal that I submitted that, based on a conversation I had with a couple of board members, that we could, if this were an acceptable condition, we could, if the district does not develop it for recreational use and ends up selling it out of necessity or other something down the road, we could commit to returning whatever funding we received from SBF. So again, the purpose is to secure this for future recreational use, and should we, again, 10, 20 years from now, we don't develop the property and we sell it at a increase in value, then potentially we could return the funds to the district, to the SBF, to make it maybe a little more palatable, because like we talked about before, it's been said that the SBF does not grant money to purchase property, but on the other hand, if it's a worthy project, you could consider it. So maybe that softens that concern, I don't know, but I just thought I would put that out there. That's basically what I have to present, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Member Pittman, you're in the queue.
Mr. Murphy. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Murphy, 2 questions I have on the particular property. Have there been any studies done or ground studies done to put a value to the property as far as any contamination or any of that kind of stuff?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. The other question is, would the zoning for those properties have to change, or is it existing compatible with the project idea?
I did not check that recently, but my understanding it is compatible.
Okay. And I agree that I think multifamily housing may be the highest and best use given the housing shortage we have right now. Thank you for your interest. Thank you.
Mr. Pittman, or excuse me, Mayor Reynolds.
Thank you. How many property owners are you dealing with here?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the 10 parcels. I have had conversation with 5 of the 6. All of the property owners on the south side of Mitchell, again, the ones immediately surrounding the activity center, and 1 of the 2 on the north side of Mitchell, and they are all willing to sell to the district. The 6th one, in spite of a phone call and a letter and a few other attempts to reach, have not responded.
I've received some communication from a couple of the owners. One owner said that he would sell for half of the appraised value. The other owner said he's absolutely not selling. So I don't know, where you're at with your negotiations, but.
And again, I haven't actually entered in any negotiation. I reached out and said we're interested.
Okay.
One of the 2 property owners on the north side never responded to my outreach, so it would be interesting to know. You and I can talk offline about who that other person is, because if it's one of the ones who I spoke with indicated a willingness to sell, it's just a matter of how much. We didn't really negotiate that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Carter?
Yes, a couple of things. Looking at it, I don't feel that the district needs to get the parcels across on the other side either. And my biggest concern for the district is being landlocked in. And if you look, I don't know if you have the picture back up there, but the area that I think is the most important is the area coming, the very first one, the largest lot, the largest facility there. Because that allows us not only to have secure parking, we have no parking now. We have Walmart coming in, the huge Walmart down there. More traffic is coming down Feather River. And it's just really hard, and it's getting to be dangerous for parents to be coming out on Feather River and turning either direction. When we have meets, there is no parking. The lot between the motel and the district is completely packed full of people, and they literally have to run down the whole dirt area of parking around the whole district and run down into the parking lot because there's no place to cross, through the fence. So my biggest concern is for future, yes, too. The 8 acres, I think, are extremely important. That's directly next to the district because that allows us for the future. We don't have, what are we going to do with our municipal auditorium? Putting more money into it. We don't have a basketball area. Not only do we need our swimming, and Nelson is a great place for swimming, but we need a warm water, really close area that benefits of our seniors. They really can't go out to Nelson and swim. It's not covered, and it's heated, but it's not a covered facility. We have an opportunity to put right next to the recreation department a state-of-the-art, not only swimming area, but anything else that we want to put there. So the land, the most important land, I think, for this district is directly, like I said, adjacent to the district itself. And the person, I know who this person is that owns I think 4 lots. But there's also an appraised value. And last year, I think the maximum appraised value was $40,000 on each lot. So, asking the $868,000, I think is not reasonable. But I do think it's reasonable to ask for the 8 acres because we do have future and we do want to keep safety of this community and it not to exceed over $400,000.
Just to clarify, the entire, all 10 parcels totaled 7.25 acres. The 2 parcels across Mitchell that it sounds like Director Carter is suggesting we don't necessarily need, we're about 1/3 of that total. So the remaining 4 point whatever acres is about half of that $868,000 number.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mr. Emberlin?
Yeah, Member Carter said quite a bit of what I was going to say also. Again, I don't favor at this point even delving into the properties north of Mitchell. Those 2 big properties, I don't see a need for it. But that parking lot has to be expanded somehow, and another egress has to be done there. It's been twice I've gotten hit. Not mad. I mean, just a nick here and nothing. But there's one exit out of that parking lot, even a small facility. I mean, I shouldn't say small facility, but they always have 2 exits in and out. So it's ridiculous. So just for that aspect, safety alone, we need to get some of that land. And again, I'm sure in talking to some of these people, they would do it as Mr. Reynolds said. One would be half the appraisal. One would be a significant, below appraisal amount. One is takeover payments of $129 or $239 a month, I believe, or something like that. So, but this land can be utilized in so many different ways, all the way up to an aquatic center, down to community park. I mean, just a small little botanical garden, but vegetable gardens for the community, a shade barbecue area for the adults while they're waiting for their kids in gymnastics or any other recreation programs there. I think it's vital not to get landlocked in there and have commercial encroachment. Just block that forever.
Right.
It's very easy to have that happen real soon. So.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Emberlin. Do we have any public speakers on this?
We have one public speaker, Lauren Gill.
All right.
Lauren forgot.
My name is Lauren Gill. I take this opportunity.
Could you actually bring them? There you go.
Take this opportunity to say I live in the Oroville region, not Oroville, and I must have filled out the wrong thing. I wanted to speak about the trail, and thank you very much for the trail. We've been trying to get that for over 20 years.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Moving on to the next item, we have Table Mountain Golf Club. We have a request for presentation. Dave, did you say you want to hear every presentation?
If they're here to present, yeah.
Is Table Mountain here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Roberto Esparza. I represent Table Mountain Golf Club. Table Mountain Golf Club has taken over the golf course from the city 30 years ago. And we are now a nonprofit organization running the course. And there's times of the year, for instance, like right now, where it's extremely difficult to get revenue for the golf course because there's no players out there. Obviously, the course is shut down today because of all the rain, and it'll probably be closed down for the next few days after that because it gets so saturated with water it becomes unplayable. We don't want to ruin the course. When the course was originally designed back in 1956, it wasn't engineered very well. The culverts that we have there that move the water through the course, not only that, but the irrigation system that we currently have on the golf course is very, very old. And a lot of it was built by farmers who wanted to put together a golf course on that particular site there next to the airport. And unfortunately, the irrigation system is very old. It breaks down, and we have to do a lot of general repairs. So the main concern that we're looking at right now is just basically trying to get some funding, some help with trying to reestablish the drainage system that we have, because on a day like today, we are moving a lot of water through the course, and a lot of it comes right off the airport and through the course, and it's damaged some of our areas where we have to hold the water back. We've lost our dam this last season, and so we're trying to figure out how we're going to generate revenue to be able to rebuild that. And we've had some quotes for $50,000 to put a small little dam in there that you can control the water flow on out, because the water comes off the airport through the course and then back onto the airport property. So that's the kind of funding that we're looking for to help. With that being said, we also have issues with sprinklers. There's many, many sprinklers on a golf course, and they're not cheap. They run right around anywhere from $60 to $70 to be able to get the longevity out of those sprinkler heads. And we buy a certain amount every month, probably 8 or 9, basically, out of our general fund to replace the ones that are not irrigating properly and putting water adequately on the course to be able to have the grass grow back. Because as a sprinkler head gets older, what happens is it beats the ground. So now you no longer have any grass, and that doesn't make a very good playing condition for our members out there. So we try to make sure that we're trying to keep those sprinkler heads in great operating condition. And like I said, I couldn't tell you the exact number of actual sprinkler heads that are out there on that course, but I can guarantee you there's quite a few. I did want to mention that, we do have a lease with the city of Oroville. We run this lease. We have to pay a percentage of our monthly gross on a regular basis. And over the last 30 years that the course has taken over the golf course, we paid like $1.3 million to the city of Oroville. And in that timeline, I don't think we've really asked for much money over that timeline. And once we heard about this funding here, I thought it was something that we should try to pursue and see if we couldn't get some assistance to help us with some of the drainage issues that we have and repairing some of the sprinkler heads that we need to have done on a regular basis, and beautify the course. I mean, the golf course, when it's in pristine condition, I feel it's one of the qualitiest golf courses in the North State. I think it's much better than Bidwell and some of the other courses that are south of us. And our membership is very good. We're at about 300 members, but we're going to lose them. Our membership is getting older, and so we have to constantly seek out ways to gain membership and bring more people coming into the course to gain revenue. We employ up to 29 people on the golf course, and to be able to keep those 29 people, we have issues with funding. Like on a day like today, nobody's giving us any revenue. It affects the number of employees that we can keep there at the golf course. And so if they're part-time, we may not bring them back, and that's not good. I think we need to try to keep people employed here in this area at all times, because it's very important to have people with good paying jobs and help the community out. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Mr. Emberlin, are you in the queue, or is that from before?
That's from before.
Okay. Members of the dais?
One quick question. In terms of membership and normal middle of the day, middle of the summer use, what kind of numbers of personnel do you, or
I would say our busiest days at the golf course are always Friday and Saturday. And you're probably looking at close to 135 rounds of paid golf. Okay. And then this time of the year, I think just last Sunday, because we knew the weather was very good, but for January, about 60 rounds of golf. But when the weather gets like it is right now, we'll probably be very low for average play for the month of January, and probably going into the month of February. So our revenue is going to drop off dramatically.
Thank you, sir. I'm not a golfer, but I've seen the excitement and the encouragement of your group, and doing a great job out there.
Well, thank you
for the presentation.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Did you push the button?
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
I think it's a great golf course. I think
Thank you.
It has a lot of, I think, work to be done. I golfed out there many years. But I'm just curious, is goal number 1 replacing the 600 feet existing drain on hole number 9 the most important, or goal number 3 getting all of the replacing sprinklers that I think benefits the entire?
I would say hole number 9, because if we're able to maintain that water flow, it backs up all the way across the whole entire golf course, and we can irrigate. And when you irrigate like that, you're able to bring in ponds, which help the waterfowl that come through the area, and land, and all the other items that go along with that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not.
Great. Moving on to item 6F. City of Oroville, $175,000 for a pavilion at Bedrock Park.
Tom Lando, Interim City Administrator, City of Oroville. You have our proposal in front of you. We're proposing to build a metal pavilion for events at Bedrock Park. Thank you.
Great. Any comments from the dais? Questions?
Go ahead, Tim.
I have Mr. Carter hit it first, Mrs. Carter, and then Mr. Emberlin.
I think it's a great idea, because I think something is missing out there. But what I'm really concerned about is the homeless. Is it going to be just a place for them all to sleep at night? And are we going to encourage them to go more to Bedrock?
We actually took out the bleachers because they were being abused. We would, in fact, look at regular patrols through here. We think it's important to bring the community back in and have events in the facility. Is that a concern? Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Member Emberlin.
Tom, that can be a beautiful park again, very easily. Again, as far as maintenance goes, and it's going to add more maintenance probably to your group. Are you going to run the power off there? Or are you going to run any other facilities, barbecues, for instance? Or
I don't know about barbecues, but we will have some power out there. And again, this, I think, is a pretty important aspect of this park, and whatever SBF can provide, we would obviously go to council and see if they'd be willing to match or even exceed. We'd like to see this facility built.
Okay. Have you been in touch with Milton Design as far as costs go? Or is this on your own? You did the cost survey.
I wasn't involved in costing this, so I cannot answer that question.
Okay, it just seemed like for what
I
you're
think
getting
the cost was taken from the Riverbend estimates. I'm fairly certain of that, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's kind of modeled after that. Okay, thanks, Tom.
Member Pittman.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Was there any site difficulty problems and where this would go in terms of, is it in the middle of the lawn, in the back, front, or what was the thought pattern on that?
Thought was middle of the lawn, so there would not be any site issues.
And I'm
subject to change. I've got to say subject to change.
I'm assuming this would be a cost for use of the pavilion or the shade structure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pember. Is there any public comment on this one?
There is not.
All right, seeing no public comment, moving on to item 6G, Haven of Hope request.
Kevin over there.
Excuse me, a question, Tom. One of the issues that we've had at Riverbend Park have been obviously vandalism and homeless issues. So number one, we had purchased cameras for Feather River Park. So, is there any plan on using them there, and or is there a plan on a fencing or something else to protect the property?
There is not a plan for fencing. If this is approved, we would have to come up with a comprehensive policing plan. And again, I don't want to claim that it's not going to be an issue, because we know that any covered structure can be. We would do our best to patrol it using whatever devices we can, potentially including cameras.
Okay, because lighting, other issues like
Right.
that weren't in this, but and so I'm wondering if
They would
where
be
those
included.
costs are. So
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lando. Moving on, number 6G, Haven of Hope requests $560,000 for their project. Do we have a representative here?
I'm not their normal official representative, but I am one of the contributors involved with Haven of Hope on Wheels. And the things that really strike me with it is that it provides some restroom facilities for the homeless that then do not interfere with the businesses or other things like that. They are not regular set-in-place facilities that then come into that not in my backyard issue, nor with them being destroyed by the homeless. And I do know that in the Bay Area where this has been used, it's actually ended up turning around to bring the homeless people back into communication with the social services and other things so that they stop being homeless. And it's actually been an incredible success. That kind of surprised me. I did not think that would happen, but apparently that has been the experience. So I just want to have those thoughts out there for your consideration on this. Thank you.
Thanks. From my understanding, there's no official representative here for Haven Hope?
I don't see.
Okay.
I have a question I'd like to get recorded to get to them to answer. I'd recommended to the group a couple times that they approach the Rose Foundation. They fund specifically projects that have to do with water quality in underserved communities. Seems like a good fit. I'd like to know if they actually reached out to that foundation.
You said a Rose Foundation?
Rose
Foundation,
okay.
Yep. It's like the flower.
All right, I would request any members have additional questions to submit them in writing for the applicant. Do we have any public comment on this one?
We do not.
All right, moving on to number 6H, Veterans Memorial Park Committee requesting $92,098. Do we have a representative here? Yes. Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm PJ Shepard, and I'm a member of the Oroville Veterans Memorial Park Committee. And first of all, before I get into the presentation, here is our letter promising the 50% match. Signed. And so this is primarily to support the trail project, which was on the consent agenda. And this provides the green shade structure that you'll see at the top there. And then 2 benches, 1 curved bench that goes under it, and a bench by the river, and then landscaping below this retaining wall that goes between the river and the retaining wall. And that ought to address a lot of safety issues. We've had a lot of concern about people not feeling safe coming out to the park, not feeling safe walking on the trail up to the bathhouse. So that, and then of course the flagpole, which was approved once before by the SBF committee. And we repurposed that to build what you probably all seen, the overlook that's currently there, the railings, and thanks to Butte County and donors, we were also able to build the memorial wall. So if you want to go through this, we can go through this presentation, or I can let you know what it includes specifically if I figure out how to work this thing. I think we'll cut right to the chase. That's a view from the overlook, and you can see a little bit the trail that goes by there. And so this section we're talking about is the blue section here, and then all the landscaping, you can see this is done by Mountain Design quite some time ago. So if you look towards the top under where it says benches and trail, that is the landscaping that we're talking about doing along the trail. And then you've all seen what we did with the previous two grants. Thank you very much for the SBF committee for those previous two. And then the county, thank you to the county and all the donors. We were able to do the wall. And now here's the heart of the grant. So a little bit better detail. You can see the seal shade structure, the granite bench on the overlook, and the twisted seal bench. And the 40-foot flagpole, we actually had funds donated by Omega New to purchase the flagpole. So we're committed to do that part of it. The rest of the park, we're going to go for building with other grants. There is a Prop 68 grant that we could theoretically use the matching funds and the SBF grant to get a much bigger grant. In other words, by providing match and being a disadvantaged community, build even more of the park, probably the restrooms, maybe some of the parking lot. Those things would all need to be decided depending on getting those funds. So I just really cut to the chase here. If you want to see, we've actually started on the 7-foot bugler for the center of the park. That would be part of the request for Prop 68 funds, which do cover public artwork. And then later, Montgomery Street entrance. First of all, I want to thank the city again for doing the sidewalk and the curb there. There's landscaping. There are a lot of grants that should be available to cover that. And then some of what we talked about for Prop 68 will come in here. It won't necessarily be in all the same order. Just depends on the funding availability. So there's probably another $1.5 million to $2 million in order to complete the entire project. And we will be seeking partnerships all along the way. We have spoken with Feather River Parks and Recreation District. We reached out to them this summer as far as partnering on getting some of these other grants. And we fully support the trail going by the park, and we're looking forward to providing a rest stop and encouraging people to come up and say thanks to all the veterans for keeping us all free. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We have two comments, or two members in the dais. We have Mr. Pittman and then Member Emberland.
Yeah, quick question, and you know, the success of it is obviously blatant with your pictures. I appreciate the pictures in your presentation. And I had a question that I couldn't answer. If someone were, or is there a plan to reserve the park for someone, say, if they wanted to have a special event there? Is it a park that may offer reservations to reserve a portion of it or all of it or something like that? Is that even in the planning of this facility?
What we have done is reserved it. We did one last year. We had a memorial service for a veteran there. And so the Veterans Memorial Park Committee reserved for that. As far as there are no picnic facilities there, our intent is not to reserve it, but to have it be open all the time for the public to use, come by the trail, use it, come look at the park, appreciate the artwork, and it's remotely possible some veterans organizations might want to have an event including the Veterans Hall, which is immediately adjacent, but no, we have, that was never really our intent. Our intent was for full public use.
Part of the reason I asked the question is the facility that's up on the levee that the city did, the Centennial Plaza, that actually has become reserved for weddings and a number of events that became surprisingly, there was so much interest in it. And I'm not proposing that, but I just was curious if you have a policy that's toward that end. I think a policy for memorial events is a perfect idea. I'm just looking at the potential of a revenue stream to help support it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Emberland?
Member Pittman asked the same question I was going to ask. I being a member, or a former member of the Honor Guard for Sacramento National Cemetery, we did a lot of memorials for veterans that just recently or passed away. There was no casket involved or anything. It was just a flag ceremony plus the honor guard during the 7-gun salute. I'm not quite clear if I got your answer. That was not if we had a case like that, or if you got requested that, hey, we have a World War II veteran or a Vietnam veteran, that he should be a full honor guard type of ceremony. Can we do it there?
Yes, and that's actually what we did last spring for a POW from the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And they had the park for the day. Just so you know, those two parking lots are park and ride lots. So they're for public use. So we can't really say they're reserved for any particular event.
All right. One other question. Something I don't hear, I've never heard. Have you had vandalism down there at all?
We have had people do designs on the retaining wall, and I regularly report to the county, who goes out there immediately and cleans off the graffiti. We expect there will be less of it. We want to thank the Feather River Parks and Recreation District and the Butte County Sheriff's team for when they did the trail cleanup. They went right past the Veterans Memorial. They took out all of the vegetation that was hiding repeated camps of people in the vicinity, and now there's really nowhere to hide. We'd like to keep it that way by putting in the new landscaping.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this one?
We do not.
All right, then. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Sorry. Next item, moving on to 6I, City of Oroville, requesting $150,000. Mr. Lando?
I am not as familiar with this request. You obviously have it in your packet. You read it. It's to build the metal guardrail and replace the worn and destroyed fencing. I would say if you have questions, I'll probably have to get them answered. I'm just not very familiar with this request.
All right. Member Pittman?
Yep. My perception is once I read that we're talking about a fixed steel fence of some type versus the chain link that's there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And would that also have lighting on top of that or not? I know there's lighting on the other side of the street.
I have to get an answer to that. I don't know.
Part of the reason I asked that question is I just was by Clear Lake, and they did a walkway, and they put in solar street lights, which is kind of an interesting idea that might be real nice and provide that as an attraction to using that trail.
And certainly that's the idea, that it is an attraction.
Thank you.
Wonderful. At this point,
I do have one public speaker on this item.
all right.
Tasha
Wonderful.
Livingston.
Tasha Livingston.
Well, my pet name for this fence right now is the tetanus fence, because you literally walk by and feel like if you get too near it, you're going to get tetanus. So I am really, really, really in favor of fixing this fence so that we can have a nice entryway into Oroville. Thank you.
Thank you. And closing out the item, one comment that I'm going to make in regards to this. When the chief presented this item, I did already mention to him at that point, this fits better, in my opinion, with the RDA funds. I do agree that fence needs repaired. Sometimes it's leaning so much that you can't even drive in the far right lane. But we have RDA funds available, specifically earmarked for blight, and this fits perfectly in that. So I've already requested that be submitted to the RDA. Moving on to item number 7, considering changing the time for all regular recording meetings to earlier in the day. Jordan Daly, you have a report on that?
Yes, so that finishes up all of your NOFA presentation. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank
I
you
appreciate
everyone
that, guys.
for your patience.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for being patient. Moving on to the staff report. It was requested by Chief Legrone for this to be on our next agenda. He is interested in moving steering committee to earlier in the day. The suggested time would be at 2 p.m. The steering committee, as you were all made aware of today, this is being broadcasted live, which is the first time since we've held meetings that you're now broadcasted live. We think that will accommodate the public for transparency and moving forward the access of these meetings. So moving it to 2 o'clock earlier in the day from 5:30.
Comments from the dais? Member Pittman?
I actually think that's a great idea, based on the fact that having meetings in the evenings sometimes prohibits us from being here versus the daytime. It's my personal preference. Of course, the rest can offer theirs too, but I think it's a great idea. Member Carter?
It's great. I like the afternoon because evenings is harder for me to drive at night, but it's true. But I also get off work from teaching right at 12 in Chico, and I could always be here at 2 o'clock.
All right, we have 2 comments. Any more comments from the dais?
We can take the peanut gallery too now.
Oh, peanut gallery, Mr. Zeitler.
The unpaid attendees, I guess. The reason that was set at 5:30 was for public comment. So I think, moving things earlier in the day. Does the city council meet at 2 o'clock?
Sometimes
why not?
We meet in the morning.
Yeah, why not?
Sometimes we meet in the morning.
But I know, but you understand what I'm saying is that when the original committee looked at this public input, and if you limit public input, you limit and you restrict yourself in getting, what you're trying to get, which is, information to make good decisions and make good decisions that stick. And so limiting, changing the time, I think, I don't care, frankly. I mean, at 2 o'clock, 3, 4, 5 doesn't make a difference to me, but I think it does make some to folks that do have to work.
Mr. Chair, if I can respectfully disagree, and I do, the Board of Supervisors meets during the day. The room was full today. We met at 1 o'clock. I think people show up when it's important to them, period.
Yeah.
And also in the age of technology, as a council member,
yeah,
and as a council member as well, people who aren't able to make it to council meetings often submit their comments in writing, and sometimes that even holds more weight because you can read it a couple times if you wanted to.
And I would add, getting comments in writing also helps us because we get to see their entirety of their comment. And if we can encourage the public to do so, it helps us. I know it's a lot easier to read it. Sometimes we don't verbally get the best communication, so I appreciate that.
And I do. I read comments that are sent to me.
Mm-hmm.
Any letters or emails, I'll read them. So it looks like we had a partial beginning of a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the time change as presented.
I'll second it.
First and second, voting open.
Motion carries.
All right. In this as well, since we've pushed items off to next week, do we need to take care of a motion for that to secure time for next?
Yes, if you could possibly set a date for a special meeting.
Or you can...
Our regular one is next week, right?
We included all regular meeting items into this one, so we would need to set, next week is a special meeting?
You have I believe, and Scott can clarify, but I believe you can either adjourn to that date at that time and
re-adjourn.
Or you can do another meeting, but the adjournment too would be better because she doesn't have to reissue an agenda.
Yep. Will there be any closed session, or it's just adjourned to the next meeting?
Or
okay.
Yeah, it's just adjourned to the next meeting.
And I thought the same thing, regarding the freedom to just dialogue on things when you're dealing with contracts or what. I know this isn't a contract, but the ability to just speak freely in closed session when you're discussing closed session items sure would be helpful. Especially when you have items that have 4 points, 3 points, and you say, well, what about this, and take that one. It'd be so much faster to negotiate this in that way. But if that's not possible, and of course we want to do everything in transparency, but just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and I appreciate exactly where you're coming from, because that would be a much faster way to get to the end goal. Unfortunately, this one doesn't qualify for a closed session.
That's fine.
For a closed session meeting.
So I hear you. I agree with that. So with that, do we make a motion or to adjourn until next week, the 23rd, until 2:00, or
you just adjourn? You would adjourn the meeting to a time and date certain, and you'd announce now when it's going to be. You just adjourn the meeting to that date and that time, and then we will post it that the meeting. It's essentially continuing the meeting. You're pausing the meeting until that date and time.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and post it on the website and to give people notice of it.
Thank you. And I know we're not exactly there yet, but I'm just curious. All right, moving on to steering committee advisory members and staff comments. Department of Water Resources, Eric C., do you have a verbal report?
I'll keep this super brief because I know we're pushed for time here. So I want to make a couple updates on our lake operations. Lake at the beginning of the meeting at noon or at 1 o'clock was at 678 and rising. Inflow was at 10,600 CFS, but I would imagine that's changed just over the course of the meeting, considering I've been listening to it rain for the last 3 hours. So let's see. The inflows, I saw a forecast yesterday, were expected to peak at 18,000 CFS. That could be more than that, though, considering how much rain we've been getting. And Lake's expected to rise to 692-foot elevation by next Thursday of next week. So it's about a 13-foot rise from where we are right now. So, yeah, it's encouraging. The lake bottomed out in the middle of December at 663.45. So we're definitely on the upswing now. So that's always encouraging. I always like to kind of keep track where the bottom point is and when we start climbing again. So
great. We have a couple of questions for you. First, Mayor Reynolds.
What is the maximum elevation that you're going to allow?
Well, we could fill the lake now. We don't have a condition like we did last year, where we weren't going to let it get above a certain amount because the spillway is fully functional now. So we could go to 900 if the weather would cooperate with us. I do want to point out, though, there's a different. We've expanded the amount of flood reservation. So when we start filling the lake in the springtime, the flood reservation is lower. So if the lake shoots up to that elevation, then we would actually maintain that elevation until a certain point in the spring, and then we would start filling it. So it's going to take a wetter spring or better snow runoff to be able to fill the lake as opposed to the previous operation regime.
I was in a presentation yesterday that where it was indicated that we won't see a full lake again. It'll be near the top, but not a full lake. Is that accurate?
I haven't heard that, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Emberland.
I had so many people ask me, when can they walk the dam again?
This summer 2019. We are actively working on that whole program right now to reopen not only the top of the dam, but spillway boat ramp and the parking lot area and the trailhead that's up there. So we are actively working on that project right now. It needs to get approval from Cal OES and our local law enforcement agencies, Butte County Sheriff's Office and Highway Patrol. So that process has to be fully completed. They have to sign off on our plan first. So we're still working on that.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Eric, back to the flood reservation, was that directed by the Corps, and when did that happen?
You know, I know the Corps has been involved in, so they typically are the primary agency. So I would say yes, probably, but I know there's been a lot of other entities, such as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that has been interested in that subject. So I don't know if it was completely a group effort or it's just the Corps of Engineers, but they're one of the primaries.
It'd be good, because back to Mayor Reynolds' question, they're not going to say that they're not going to fill the lake. However, I don't know how much they increase the flood reservation by, and that could have a dramatic effect on how often the lake fills.
I think it's about 14 feet, as I recall. That plan actually is on our website. It's public information.
And I've got no dog in this fight. I'm just, because the actual comment was, we'll never see 850 feet again. So that's
I actually made the comment, so let me throw me under the bus. The 850, the one is the ad hoc. There's an ad hoc group that's meeting to determine lake operations at that point. Our understanding is the concern is from areas down south, lower than Oroville, on having the lake be full, even with the spillway and other things that are there. Until we actually see what those operations are, I'm going to assume they're not going to allow, over 850. Now, 850 I said, would probably be the max, but we don't know yet at that point. But I think if without the spillway and other things that are there's a lot of vetting and things that have to be done still to determine what this is going to be. But I don't think we're ever going to go back to normal where it was fill at 900. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I'm on the queue now, and I've brought this up, I think, every SBF meeting I've been at so far for a while. Highway 99.
Billboards.
Yes.
We are working on that with the Chamber of Commerce right now. I know I've said that before. We unfortunately, our person who was working on that lost her house in the Paradise Fire, so she was gone for a month, but she's now back. And so Liza, she is working on that with the Chamber of Commerce. It's not just as simple as just finding the old sheets that they had and sticking them up there. They need to figure out what the messaging should be, and that's what we're working with the Chamber of Commerce for. We have a contract with the Chamber to get that done. So we're trying to work with the Chamber to get that accomplished. So
wherever it's at on the priority list, could they bump it up a little bit?
Well, it
is. People go 99. That's our front. All they see is the levee and the billboards.
I understand.
And the billboards are falling apart, and so it's a reflection of our town. And to me, it's a disgrace. Mm-hmm. So it frustrates me, and I drive by it all the time. Because I live in Thermalito, so driving out, I see them constantly, and it's just I shake my head every time I see them, and it's really irritating.
Yeah, it's in the contract. We have a contract with the Chamber. We provide the funding for it, so we're
all right
working with them to get it done.
Mr. Mayor Reynolds. Actually, I'm sorry. Member Pittman is first in the queue.
Two quick questions. One is, with the rising water, is that delayed any of the lower water construction projects?
Right now they're not working today just because it's raining so hard, but they have been working in between the storms. So I'm happy to say that the lower portion of the Bidwell Stage 2 boat ramp project, that part, they've got all the concrete in. Good. In fact, all the concrete in the boat ramp is now done. So they're working. They had that in mind. So they got the lower end stuff completed first, and they're working the upper area now. So they're in the process of getting the rebar out because they're going to be paving that Stage 2 parking lot now. It's going to be a concrete parking lot. Excellent. So so it's they're just working in between the storms. It's not the ideal time of the year to work. We know that, but for when you're working in the fluctuation zone and you want to get as deep as you can, you have to use this time of the year for your construction period.
And the second question actually goes to the billboards, and I know it's not in the thought pattern right now, but to me it would be great to see both those boards as electronic signboards. that would be a big ramp and step up. I don't know what the cost is, but I'm with Scott that that's the entrance to our community. And part of the thing that really shocked me is I talked to a long-term, multiple-year family in Chico, and they, honest to God, thought that the Lake Oroville was the afterbay along Highway 99.
Oh, jeez.
Really?
And I didn't make that up. Okay, so we really need to get the word out and explain to people. And you even know who I'm talking about. I won't tell you, but it's what? You think that's Lake Oroville? So signboards are a big deal, and they really make a difference, and I appreciate your efforts there. And I'm just looking down the road. Electronic would be a wonderful addition.
Well, I don't think the amount of money we have in the budget with the chamber would cover
I know.
that,
I understand. I'm just down the road.
Sure.
Awesome. Mayor Reynolds?
Since we're talking about signs, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I hope somebody can. When you are pulling into Oroville from the south, there are signs directing people to Lake Oroville going down Ophir Road. Why are we doing that instead of running them through our town so they can fill up their boats and vehicles and buy their hot dogs or groceries or whatever they're headed to the lake? They are being deterred down Ophir Road.
Well, now I'm now recounting going to explain what I've heard. I don't know this firsthand, so I take it for what it is. But I heard that was a decision made a long time ago by recreation enthusiasts that wanted to get people to the lake and provide them with an alternative to getting through the congestion with their boats and stuff through town. So that was what I was told, and that happened back in the 90s when they put those signs out. But I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I've heard. So
actually, from what I'm understanding, is those signs are a lot more recent than that, around when the KOA went in at the casino.
Oh, really? Yeah, I don't know. Kevin, do you know?
That's what
I was going to say, oh, okay.
We've got an extra.
Yeah,
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Claudia.
Does DWR own the signs on Ophir?
No.
I didn't think so. So we've had this complaint at the chamber, and we're trying to find out who owns them. We think perhaps one of the casinos owns the signs, which means they're private property. But we have received that complaint and would like to, if we can find out who owns it, maybe we can suggest that they change it a little bit. As to the billboards on 99, we've had a meeting with people from Sacramento, came up and met with us. And they were going to get back to us within a week, and we haven't heard back. Yeah. So I don't know about that, but
the ball's in our court.
Yeah, the ball's in your court.
Okay. So were you working with Liza on that project?
No, it was I think Scott and Aaron Mellon.
Okay,
and
yeah.
one other person.
Liza's back now. She's been gone for a while.
Yeah, she came over a couple of days ago.
Okay.
So I'm just
She's
looking
not
for some clarification. You're saying that those signs are probably owned by the casino, and
that's our best
there might be
guess.
some sort of agreement with the property owner, or because they seem to be in the right of way for the road.
I would think it'd be Caltrans that would own the signs, but
We don't know yet. I mean, we want to find out, so that's why I was kind of
So I heard a
asking
volunteer
Eric.
for a head of a committee, or
No, you didn't. You turned down your hearing aid or turn it up or something.
I'm sure if something were to happen to the signs, then we'd find out who owns them.
Well,
Not
that's,
suggesting
that's
anything.
a thought. That's a thought.
Not suggesting anything.
I think the chamber is a great agency to be lead on this particular problem. So thank you very much.
I think it's a good thing for city council. Oh, one more thing, unrelated. I noticed that there were several proposals that don't really even begin to fit within the parameters of the SBF guidelines. I don't know if all of you have read the Regional Fund Strategic Plan. I strongly recommend that you do, because that is the roadmap. And some of these things were so far off the roadmap that I don't even know why they're on the list. So that's just from years of experience.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Do we have a...
And if I could follow on that, I'm not going to be able to make it next week. Is that where the meeting's scheduled? On
Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah, I'm going to be in D.C. So if I could just put in for all of the proposals, whether the applicants do this or staff does it, the other thing that we have out there for guidance, we finished our Feather River conceptual plan last year. And it'd be nice to know on those projects, are they within that plan as a priority or mentioned at all, or are they not, just as a cut? Because again, we have the Regional Fund Strategic Plan, we have that document, which are two things that their intent is to help guide the committee. So just having an answer to that on each of those projects, do they fit within that plan or not, would be helpful.
Yeah, I would recommend we have a committee that pre-qualifies these applicants, because we are kind of getting out of left field with some things.
Do we have a State Water Contractors Advisory Report? I don't see Tim here today. All right, also Supplemental Benefit Fund Program Specialist Report, Jordan Daly. You have a written report.
Yeah, it's
right?
just a written report I provided for you guys on the financial summary. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Also hearing of individuals on non-agenda items. Do we have any blue cards for not?
I do not have any more blue cards.
All right, so wonderful. So at this point, SBF chairperson call for agenda items.
If there's anything someone wants to add.
Yeah, anything you'd like to add to the next agenda,
meeting.
which would, since we're continuing this one, it would be for our April meeting. Anything you would like to bring to that agenda?
Maybe we can do those at the next meeting then.
Sounds good.
And I would suggest there's really no rush to act. I heard the mayor's suggestion. I think you ought to be cautious. I mean, you have a limited amount of dollars. You ought to make sure you're spending them appropriately. And again, there's really not a need to allocate that money next week. I would concur with the request to see how it matches up with the plans and proceed cautiously. Just my 2 cents worth.
Any comments from the dais?
Good job, everybody.
Yeah, good job. Long meeting. Would like to adjourn this meeting until next Wednesday at, now this is the point of discussion, I would like to say 2 o'clock. Yeah, 2 p.m. next Wednesday. That's the 23rd, correct? Of January. Thank you everybody for coming. Good night. This meeting is now adjourned. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, so much fun.
Yes, I got one yesterday.
Did you get one? Okay.
I did.
All
I got
right.
one yesterday. In fact, I looked at it.
Well,
I thought,
take home to give your wife.
now, does it have the address on it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there is. Yep. Good.
Open 12 hours a day.
Days like today are tough.
You know, we get a lot used to it.
Do you really?
People go out and get themselves mudded up.
Oh, yeah.
I've never thought.
And yours is one of those where it's like, you have
Self-serve.
the,
Self-serve. And the biggest use right now in the winter is
To visit like Oroville sites or?
would never have thought that.
Huh. Yeah, I
kind of scary.
was it Matt Murray that might have been? Yeah, Liza would have been involved. But again, she was gone until the first week of December. So.
Hopefully they're not. They're all appropriate.
Nothing's worse than having a lady back in the car and asking.
No, I haven't. But she's back now, so if you send her an email, I'm sure you could get it going. Yeah, she's back, but she's got a lot of catch up and stuff like that. So the best thing to do is I would do it right now, but just send her an email and so she reminds her. Just maybe she's frazzled with everything else she has going on. But she's doing her best to get caught up with everything. So.
We can't fund everything, but we found a lot of it. So lots of fun, huh?
All right, we're on the same page.
I'm not sure. That was our environmental services office, but I know they're planning on doing it again next year, so I'm sure they have all that equipment.
And the phone call was essentially complaining about, all kinds of regulations. Let me ask you a question. The allegation education board, Brown Act violations, financial improprieties, conflicts of interest. And I said, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, why don't you send it written also that way?
Right. They charge, adults and so, then they use that for the kids. I'm not sure where that project was. I know they did it during the Salmon Festival, and I know they're going to do it again this coming year in December.
Okay, why don't we wait and see how this plays out?
They were trying to expand the program, and they were going to work. They were going to work with Butte Environmental Council, I think it was, and
this thing was